There is a familiar state of being, a place we find ourselves in more often than we'd like to admit. It can happen anywhere, but picture it here, in a car, stopped in a sea of traffic. Outside, a chorus of horns and engines creates a dissonant symphony of impatience. But the real traffic jam, the more suffocating one, is happening inside. The mind is gridlocked. A conversation from this morning plays on a loop, each word analyzed, each tone second-guessed. An upcoming meeting looms, a wave of unspoken expectations and potential failures. A hand, of its own accord, tightens its grip on the steering wheel, a physical echo of the internal clenching. This is the feeling of being stuck, of being bound by what has already passed and what has not yet come. This is the prison of our own making. This feeling, this internal paralysis, is not a personal failure. It is the quiet epidemic of our modern world, the collective hum of a low-grade, persistent anxiety that thrums just beneath the surface of our days. We are a culture of gatherers, not of berries and nuts, but of worries, regrets, and expectations. We cling to who we were yesterday, attaching our identity to stories of past success or failure. We cling to our vision of tomorrow, convinced that our peace depends on a specific outcome we cannot possibly control. We cling to the approval of others, a bottomless need for validation in a world of fleeting attention. We cling to our own thoughts, believing them to be solid, true, and urgent. We are told that happiness lies in acquiring more, in achieving more, in becoming more. And so we clench our fists tighter and tighter, striving and grasping, only to find our palms empty, our muscles aching, and our spirit profoundly tired. But what if there is another way? What if the path to freedom isn't about grasping harder, but about learning, gently, how to open our hand? What if peace is not something to be found, but something to be allowed by letting go of all that obscures it? This is the promise of an ancient wisdom, a path carved not through ambition, but through release. It is the profound and radical art of letting go, as understood and practiced within the tradition of Zen Buddhism. This is not a call to apathy or a retreat from the world. It is the opposite. It is a practical, courageous skill for engaging with life as it truly is, finding a resilient, unshakable peace in the very midst of the chaos. This journey we are about to embark on is an exploration of that art, a guide to releasing the invisible chains we carry and rediscovering the spacious, quiet freedom that has been waiting for us all along. To begin this journey inward, we must first look at the mechanism of our own captivity. We must examine the very nature of the chains that bind us. In the opening moments, we pictured a hand clenching a steering wheel, a physical manifestation of an internal state. This clenching, this gripping, this refusal to let go has a name in Buddhist thought. It is called upadana. The word, from the ancient Pali language, is profoundly descriptive. It doesn't just mean to cling or to grasp. It also means fuel, sustenance, or cause. This is a critical insight. Our clinging is not a passive state. It is an active process. It is the very fuel that feeds the fires of our anxiety, our dissatisfaction, and our persistent sense of struggle. These chains are not forged by an external captor. We are, in every moment of unconscious gripping, feeding the fire that consumes our peace. Understanding this process is the first step toward extinguishing the flames. This habit of clinging is not a personal flaw or a sign of weakness. It is a deep, primal impulse, born from our brain's desire for safety and certainty in a world that offers neither. Our distant ancestors survived by identifying patterns, by making quick judgments, by holding on to rules that kept them safe from predators and poisonous plants. The mind developed a magnificent ability to create maps of reality and to believe in those maps implicitly. This tendency, once a key to survival, has become the source of our psychological suffering. We continue to seek solid ground where there is only a flowing river. We cling to ideas, to relationships, to our own self-image, as if they were permanent, unchanging rocks in the stream of existence. We invest them with a solidity they do not possess, and then we are shocked and hurt when the current of life inevitably wears them down or carries them away. Our suffering arises not from the fact that things change, but from our refusal to accept it, from our desperate, exhausting attempt to hold the river in place. This is the fundamental error of the clinging mind. It mistakes the map for the territory, and in doing so, it creates a prison of its own expectations. To truly understand these unseen chains, it is helpful to see them not as one single thing, but as four distinct, yet interwoven, strands. The Buddha, like a master physician of the mind, identified these four types of upadana, four primary ways in which we fuel our own discontent. The first, and most obvious, is the clinging to sense pleasures. This goes far beyond simple materialism, far beyond the desire for a new car or a bigger house. It is the moment-to-moment addiction to pleasant sensations and the desperate avoidance of unpleasant ones. It's the compulsive reach for the smartphone, seeking the tiny, fleeting hit of validation from a notification. It's the mindless consumption of food, not for nourishment, but to numb a feeling of emptiness or anxiety. It is the endless chase for the next entertaining video, the next beautiful image, the next song that will distract us from the silence. The mind becomes a hungry ghost, forever seeking, but never truly satisfied, because every pleasant sensation is, by its very nature, impermanent. The pleasure fades, the distraction ends, and the underlying sense of lack returns, often stronger than before. We become trapped on a hedonic treadmill, running faster and faster simply to stay in the same place, perpetually convinced that the next taste, the next purchase, the next experience will finally deliver the lasting happiness that has so far eluded us. It is a game that cannot be won. The second form of clinging is far more subtle and arguably far more powerful. It is the clinging to views. This is our attachment to our opinions, our beliefs, our ideologies, and our narratives about the world. We hold on to our political affiliations, our scientific paradigms, our personal philosophies, as if they were our very identity. We curate them, defend them, and feel a surge of righteous anger when they are challenged. An attack on our point of view is no longer just a disagreement. It is perceived by the ego as a direct assault on our very being. This is the root of endless arguments with loved ones, the source of the rigid polarization we see in society, and the seed of devastating conflicts throughout human history. The clinging mind would rather be right than be at peace. It builds a fortress of ideas and then spends its life defending the walls, forgetting that the purpose of a view should be to see reality more clearly, not to hide from it. When we cling to a view, we stop seeing. We only compare, judge, and defend. We lose the curiosity and openness that are essential for growth and wisdom. Third, there is the clinging to rites and rituals. For a modern, secular audience, this may sound like an ancient or irrelevant concern, but this form of clinging is alive and well in our daily lives. It is the rigid belief that our specific morning routine, if executed perfectly, will guarantee a good day. It is the superstitious adherence to a particular diet or workout regimen, believing the form itself holds a magical key to well-being, rather than the mindful intention behind it. It is the corporate executive clinging to a specific process or methodology, unable to adapt when circumstances change. This clinging mistakes the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. We become attached to the external practice, the ritual, the set of rules, and lose sight of the inner state it was meant to cultivate. We perform the ceremony without the heart. We follow the steps without the spirit. This creates a brittle and fragile sense of order, one that shatters the moment life presents a situation that doesn't fit our prescribed formula. Finally, we arrive at the fourth and deepest strand, the taproot from which all other forms of clinging grow. This is the clinging to a doctrine of the self. It is the unwavering, and nearly always unexamined, belief in a permanent, solid, independent me at the center of our experience. This self, this ego, is the protagonist of the story we tell ourselves every single day. We construct it from fragments of memory, from social labels, from the praise and criticism of others. I am a creative person. I am not good with numbers. I am a victim. I am a success. We cling to this narrative with ferocious intensity. It provides a sense of identity, of continuity, of knowing who we are. But according to this wisdom, this self is a fabrication. It is a useful convention for navigating the world, but it is not a fixed reality. It is a process, not a thing. To cling to it is to cling to a ghost, and because this constructed self is so fragile, we must constantly protect and defend it, leading to endless comparison, jealousy, pride, and shame. It is this perceived self that feels the sting of insult, that swells with pride, that fears its own eventual demise. It is the ultimate object of our attachment, the central character in the drama that fuels our suffering. This brings us to the core equation of our discontent. The problem is not simply that we cling. The problem is that we cling to things that are, by their very nature, impermanent. This is the profound Buddhist insight of anicca, or impermanence. Everything changes. Our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, our relationships, the world around it, is all in a constant state of flux. To cling, therefore, is to fight a battle we can never win. It is to set ourselves in direct opposition to the fundamental nature of reality. Imagine trying to capture the flow of a river by building a dam out of sand. It is an act of futility that can only end in frustration and collapse. The pain is not caused by the river. The pain is caused by the dam. There is a timeless story that illustrates this predicament with perfect clarity. In some parts of Asia, hunters have a clever method for trapping monkeys. They take a coconut or a gourd, make a small hole in it, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through, and place some rice or a sweet treat inside. They then secure the gourd to a tree. A monkey, drawn by the bait, will reach its hand inside and grasp the rice. But with its hand now formed into a fist, it cannot pull it back through the small hole. The monkey will pull and shriek, growing more and more frantic, but it will not be able to free itself. The hunters can then simply walk up and capture it. At any moment, the monkey could be free. All it has to do is open its hand, release the rice, and pull its empty hand out. But its desire, its clinging to that small handful of rice, is so strong that it becomes a prisoner of its own choosing. We are that monkey. The rice is whatever we cling to: a past hurt, a future fantasy, a cherished opinion, a fleeting pleasure, our very idea of who we are. The gourd is the circumstance, and freedom, peace, is always just one simple, yet incredibly difficult action away. The willingness to open our hand, the willingness to let go. It is crucial here to make a distinction. This wisdom does not advocate for the eradication of all desire. The tradition distinguishes between a healthy, skillful desire or intention, known as chanda, and the unhealthy, obsessive craving, that is tanha. Chanda is the desire to walk a path, to learn, to grow, to be a kinder person, to alleviate suffering for oneself and others. It is a wholesome energy that propels us forward. Tanha, on the other hand, is the feverish thirst that leads to clinging. It is the demand that reality conform to our wishes. The desire to be a good parent is chanda. The anxious, rigid belief that my child must be happy at all times for me to be a worthy parent is tanha. One is a source of motivation, the other is the fuel for suffering. These, then, are the unseen chains. They are the active, moment-to-moment processes of clinging, of fueling our own fires with the kindling of sense pleasures, views, rituals, and the story of ourselves. We do this because we mistakenly believe these things are solid and will bring us lasting safety. But because the world and everything in it is impermanent, this strategy is doomed to fail, creating a constant, low-level friction between our expectations and reality. Having now identified these chains, having seen how the mechanism of our own captivity works, we can proceed to the next step. We can now turn to the formal, compassionate diagnosis of this universal human condition, the first great truth offered by the Buddha as a starting point for the path to freedom. Having examined the unseen chains of clinging, we arrive at the threshold of the Buddha's first and most fundamental teaching. These teachings are often presented as the Four Noble Truths, and it is most helpful to see them not as dogmatic proclamations, but as the methodical, compassionate steps of a physician diagnosing an ailment. The Buddha is often called the Great Physician, for he approached the universal condition of humanity with the same clear-eyed pragmatism as a doctor treating a patient. He first identifies the symptom, then diagnoses the cause, then confirms that a cure is possible, and finally prescribes the specific medicine. To begin this process, one must first have the courage to look at the symptom, to name the disease. This first step, this diagnosis, is the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha. The word dukkha is often translated from the Pali language into English as suffering. This translation, while not entirely incorrect, is tragically incomplete. For a Western mind, suffering conjures images of immense tragedy, of famine, war, debilitating disease, or profound bereavement. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, it encompasses something far more subtle, more pervasive, and more intimately familiar to every single one of us. A more nuanced translation might be unsatisfactoriness, unease, stress, or as some have beautifully described it, the feeling of a wheel that is slightly off its axle. As the wheel turns, there is a constant, subtle bump, a persistent friction, a feeling that things are not quite right. This is dukkha. It is the background hum of anxiety in a quiet room, the fleeting sense of disappointment when an anticipated event doesn't quite meet our expectations, the gnawing feeling that something is missing, even when life is, by all external measures, good. It is not a judgment that your life is bad. It is a diagnosis that the very nature of unexamined, conditioned existence has an inherent quality of unsatisfactoriness. To name this is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of profound realism and compassion. It is the end of pretending and the beginning of healing. To fully grasp the depth of this diagnosis, the physician of the mind breaks the symptom down into three distinct, yet related, types. First, there is the most obvious form, dukkha dukkha, which can be translated as the suffering of suffering, or the dukkha of painful experiences. This is the pain that everyone, without exception, acknowledges as suffering. It is the sharp, undeniable pain of a migraine headache, of a broken bone, of chronic illness. It is the searing emotional pain of heartbreak, the sting of betrayal, the hollow ache of loneliness. It is the grief that comes with the death of a loved one, a sorrow so profound it feels as if it has rewritten our own cellular structure. It is the mental anguish of anxiety, the heavy, suffocating blanket of depression, the terror of a panic attack. This form of dukkha requires no philosophical explanation. It is the raw, visceral experience of pain that is an unavoidable part of human life. By starting here, the Buddha creates an immediate common ground. He is not speaking of an abstract concept, but of a reality we all know in our bones. He is saying, simply, I see your pain. It is real. It is a part of this life. The second type is more subtle, and it reveals the genius of this psychological system. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the unsatisfactoriness that arises from the fact that pleasant experiences do not last. This is a crucial point. It does not deny the existence of happiness, joy, and pleasure. It simply observes that because these states are impermanent, they contain within them the seed of potential suffering for a mind that clings. Think of the exquisite beauty of a perfect sunset. The joy it brings is real and valid, but for the clinging mind, a subtle sadness accompanies it, a quiet melancholy that this perfect moment is already passing, that it cannot be held. Think of the deep happiness of a wonderful vacation. The viparinama dukkha is that sinking feeling on the last day, the anxiety of returning to routine. It is the bittersweet joy of watching your children grow up, cherishing their present age while simultaneously mourning the loss of the younger child they just were. It is the anxiety that haunts success, the fear that the good times will end, that the promotion will be lost, that the market will turn. The happiness itself was not the problem. The problem is our attachment to it, our demand that it become permanent in a world where nothing is. This form of dukkha is what makes the endless pursuit of pleasure so exhausting and ultimately futile. We finally get what we want, only to be immediately burdened with the fear of losing it. Finally, we arrive at the third and most profound type, sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence itself. This is the wheel that is off its axle. This is the background hum. To understand this, we must remember what we learned about clinging to a self. Our existence is conditioned because it is comprised of and dependent on a multitude of ever-changing physical and mental components: body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. There is no solid, unchanging CEO in charge. We are more like a process than a thing, a wave in the ocean, not a separate drop of water. Sankhara dukkha is the inherent stress and vulnerability of this fragile, constructed existence. It is the deep-seated existential angst that can surface in quiet moments. It is the subtle but persistent energy required to maintain and defend the ego, to keep the story of me going. It is that vague feeling of being burdened, without knowing exactly what the burden is. It is present even when you are not in physical or emotional pain, and even when a pleasant experience is not ending. It is the fundamental unsatisfactoriness of being a vulnerable, temporary assembly of processes, in a mind that craves permanence and absolute security. This is the deepest and most pervasive form of dukkha, the root disease of which all other forms of suffering are merely symptoms. In our modern culture, which often worships relentless positivity and encourages us to suppress or ignore discomfort, this diagnosis can seem jarring, even morbid. We are told to look on the bright side, to power through, to present a curated image of success and happiness at all times. To speak of inherent unsatisfactoriness feels like a violation of this unspoken code. But the path of wisdom does not lie in denial. It lies in courageous, compassionate acknowledgement. Imagine going to a doctor with a serious illness, and the doctor refusing to name it, saying only, "Let's focus on the parts of you that aren't sick." You would find a new doctor. The diagnosis is not the illness. It is the first step toward the cure. Naming dukkha is not an act of surrendering to despair. It is an act of empowerment. It puts an end to the exhausting pretense that everything is, or should be, perfect. It validates our deepest intuition that something is fundamentally amiss. It allows us to finally stop blaming ourselves or the world for this feeling of being off-kilter, and to instead, with curiosity and kindness, begin to investigate its nature. There is a famous story that beautifully illustrates this compassionate and universal truth. A young woman named Kisagotami was consumed by grief. Her only child had died, and in her madness, she carried his small body from house to house, begging for a medicine that could restore his life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man directed her to the Buddha. She laid her son at the Buddha's feet and pleaded for the magical medicine. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and told her he could help. But first, she must bring him a single mustard seed. There was one condition. The seed had to come from a house that had never known death. Filled with a desperate hope, Kisagotami went from house to house. At each door, she asked for the mustard seed. Everyone was willing to give her one, but when she asked the vital question, "Has anyone in this house a parent, a child, a spouse, a servant ever died?" the answer was always the same. One family had lost a father, another had lost a daughter, a third had lost an aunt. There was no house, not a single one, that had been untouched by death. As the day wore on, the truth began to dawn on her. Her grief, which had felt so singular, so isolating, so uniquely hers, was in fact the shared, universal inheritance of all people. She saw that the Buddha had not sent her on a quest for a magical seed, but on a journey toward a profound realization. Her personal dukkha, the raw pain of her loss, had been transformed into a compassionate understanding of the universal nature of suffering. She returned to the Buddha, not for a cure for her son, but with the quiet wisdom of acceptance. This is the purpose of the first noble truth. It is not to tell us that life is miserable. It is to do for us what the Buddha did for Kisagotami, to take our personal, isolating pain and place it in the vast, compassionate context of the shared human condition. It is to assure us that we are not alone in our experience of the wheel being off its axle. This very feeling is what connects us all. By bravely and honestly looking at this diagnosis, we are not concluding a journey in pessimism. We are opening the door to a deeper inquiry. We are now standing on solid, truthful ground, ready to ask the next, all-important question. If this is the symptom, what is the cause? We stand now on the firm ground of the first great realization, the acknowledgement of dukkha, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of an unexamined life. A courageous and honest diagnosis. But a diagnosis in itself is incomplete. It tells us what is wrong, but not why. A physician who only described a patient's symptoms without seeking their origin would be of little help. And so the Buddha, the great physician of the mind, leads us to the next crucial step in this process of healing, the discovery of the cause. This is the second noble truth, the truth of samudaya, the origin of our suffering. The cause, he identified, is a force so intimate, so relentless, and so deeply embedded in our being that we rarely ever notice it. He gave it the name tanha. This Pali word, tanha, is most often translated as craving, but its essence is more accurately captured by the word thirst. It is not a casual want or a mild preference. It is a deep, primal, and persistent thirst. It is the urgent, driving force behind our every action, the engine that turns the off-axle wheel of dukkha. It is the inner voice that perpetually whispers, I need, I want, I must have, I must get rid of. This thirst is the active ingredient in our discontent. It is the source of the inner friction we feel. While the first noble truth describes the pain of our condition, the second points directly to the wound itself. It tells us that our suffering is not random, it is not a punishment, and it is not without a cause. It arises from this very thirst. To understand this thirst is to begin the process of liberating ourselves from its tyranny. Like a skilled diagnostician, the Buddha identified three distinct faces of this powerful thirst, three primary channels through which it operates and perpetuates our state of unease. The first is the most familiar, kama, tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the relentless drive for experiences that are pleasing to our six senses, for beautiful sights, pleasant sounds, fragrant smells, delicious tastes, comforting textures, and stimulating ideas. This is the engine of our consumer culture. It fuels the endless scroll through social media feeds, our eyes hungry for the next novel image, the next bit of curated perfection. It is the craving that leads us to binge-watch an entire series in a single weekend, desperate for the narrative to fill a sense of inner emptiness. It is the desire for the next gourmet meal, the next expensive gadget, the next fleeting romantic high, each one promising a final satisfaction that it can never deliver. The mind, in the grip of kama tanha, operates under a profound delusion, the belief that an external object or experience has the power to permanently quell an internal feeling of lack. But because every sensation is impermanent, the relief is always temporary. The delicious taste fades, the exciting movie ends, the validation from a like vanishes, and the underlying thirst returns, often demanding a stronger, more intense experience to achieve the same momentary peace. It is a cycle of dependence, a hunger that grows with every feeding. The second form of thirst is deeper and more entwined with our identity. Bhava, tanha, the thirst for existence, or the thirst for becoming. This is not simply the biological will to live, it is the psychological craving to be somebody, to solidify our sense of self, to build and embellish the ego. It is the insatiable ambition that whispers, when I achieve this rank, when I earn that degree, when I am recognized by these people, then my life will have meaning, then I will be complete. It is the thirst for status, for reputation, for a legacy. It is the deep desire for our personal story to be a heroic one, and for that story to be affirmed by the world. This thirst is what drives our endless, exhausting social comparisons. We look at others not to connect, but to measure, to see if we are winning or losing in the imaginary game of life. We accumulate accomplishments, titles, and possessions, not merely for their utility or pleasure, but as bricks to build the fortress of our identity. This thirst to become something, to be a permanent and significant me, is a direct reaction to the terrifying, subconscious inkling that we might be impermanent and fundamentally interconnected. Bhavatanha is the ego's desperate attempt to carve itself in stone, to defy the universal law of change. The third face of thirst is the dark twin of the second, Vibhava Tanha, the thirst for non-existence, or the thirst for annihilation. If the thirst for becoming is the drive to pull pleasant things toward us, the thirst for non-existence is the violent urge to push unpleasant things away, to destroy them. In its most extreme form, this is the desire for self-annihilation, the wish for the pain to end through the ending of oneself. But in our daily lives, it manifests in countless subtler ways. It is the craving for a difficult emotion, like shame or fear, to simply disappear. It is the anger that wishes to obliterate the person or situation that is causing us pain. It is every form of numbing and escapism, the excessive drink to forget the day, the compulsive busyness to avoid feeling a difficult truth, the cynical dismissal of anything that threatens our worldview. Vibhava Tanha is the get it away from me reaction. It is the desperate desire to annihilate the present moment because it is uncomfortable. It reveals itself to be the other side of the same coin as the thirst for becoming. One craves to add to the self, the other craves to subtract from the pain felt by the self. Both are a violent rejection of reality as it is. Both are rooted in the same fundamental thirst for control over our experience. These three streams of thirst flow together to form a powerful, self-perpetuating river, a vicious cycle that keeps us trapped. The cycle works like this. First, a feeling of unease arises, the background hum of dukkha. Second, the thirsty mind, tanha, immediately seeks a cause and a solution outside of itself. It identifies something to crave a pleasure to obtain, an ego boost to achieve, or a discomfort to annihilate. Third, we act on this thirst, and for a brief, shining moment, we may find relief. The craving is temporarily sated. But fourth, because all things are impermanent, the pleasure fades, the accomplishment feels hollow, or the numbing agent wears off. And finally, the original feeling of unease returns, often amplified by the disappointment of the failed solution. The cycle begins again. The thirst re-emerges, often stronger and more demanding than before. The most potent metaphor for this entire process is that of a person dying of thirst in the desert who comes across the ocean. In their delirium, they cup the salt water in their hands and drink it down. For a fleeting instant, the cool liquid soothes their parched throat. It feels like salvation, but within moments, the salt begins to draw the remaining moisture from their body, and they are seized by a thirst far more agonizing and desperate than before. This is precisely how tanha operates. It presents itself as the cure, while in reality, it is the very poison that deepens the disease. Each sip of craving, each attempt to quench the inner lack with an external solution, only intensifies the fundamental thirst and reinforces the cycle of dukkha. This thirst is not merely a generator of fleeting pain, it is the master architect of the ego itself. The sense of a solid, separate I is not a pre-existing entity that has cravings. Rather, the I is constructed and reinforced through the very act of craving. Every time the mind says, I want this, or I need that, or I hate this, it is solidifying the illusion of a central I who is doing the wanting, needing, and hating. The ego is like a shadow that proves its existence by pointing at things. Without the constant activity of thirst-off pulling toward and pushing away, the sense of a separate self begins to soften and dissolve. By understanding this, we shift our perspective. The ego is not an enemy to be fought and destroyed. That would just be another act of vibhava tanha, the thirst for annihilation. Instead, the ego is seen as a process, a habit, fueled by thirst. The path to freedom, then, is not to attack the ego, but to gently and mindfully cut off its fuel supply by learning to relate to our thirst in a new way. It is absolutely essential to hold this understanding with great compassion. The second noble truth is not an accusation. It is not meant to induce guilt or shame for having cravings. This thirst is a deep, impersonal, biological, and psychological inheritance. It is woven into our DNA, a remnant of a survival mechanism that has gone into overdrive. To feel thirst is not a moral failing. It is simply part of the human condition. The intention here is not to encourage self-blame, but to cultivate clear seeing. The goal is to develop the capacity to witness the thirst as it arises in the mind, to see it, to feel its texture, to recognize its flavor without immediately obeying its command. This mindfulness, this clear and non-judgmental awareness, is the first ray of light in the darkness. The moment you can see the thirst as a phenomenon passing through you, rather than the absolute truth of who you are, it begins to lose its power. And so, the great physician has shown us the symptom, dukkha, and pinpointed its origin, tanha. A diagnosis this precise this stark, could easily lead to despair if the story ended here. If we were simply told, you feel dissatisfied because you are perpetually thirsty, and that's just the way it is, that would be a truly noble, but also a truly terrible truth. But this is only the second step in a four-part journey. The very fact that the cause has been so clearly identified implies that it is not insurmountable. The specificity of the diagnosis is, in fact, the foundation for a profound and liberating hope. It means a cure is possible. It begs the next, hopeful question. Can this thirst be quenched? Can this fire be extinguished? This leads us directly to the threshold of the third noble truth, the incredible proclamation that there is, in fact, an end to suffering. We have walked through the somber landscape of the first two truths. We have looked with unflinching honesty at the diagnosis of our shared condition, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness called dukkha. We have stared into the very engine of that condition, the relentless, self-perpetuating fire of thirst, of craving, called tanha. To remain here would be to be left in a state of intelligent despair, to understand the mechanics of our own prison cell without ever being told that a key exists. It is at this critical juncture that the Buddha makes his most radical, most luminous, and most hopeful proclamation. This is the great pivot in the physician's diagnosis. It is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. The Pali word Nirodha translates directly as cessation, ending, or extinction. This is the good news. This is the prognosis for a full recovery. This is the truth that elevates the entire teaching from a bleak philosophy into a practical path of liberation. The third noble truth states, with profound certainty, that there is an end to suffering. The thirst of tanha can be quenched. The fire of craving, aversion, and delusion can be extinguished. And the state that is realized when that fire goes out is known by another famous and famously misunderstood word, nirvana. Before we proceed, we must clear the ground of the many popular myths that cloud this concept. In the West, nirvana has been imagined as everything from a spaced-out, blissful stupor to a heavenly paradise one enters after death. It is neither of these things. Nirvana is not a place. It is not a distant heaven in the clouds. Nor is it a reward for a virtuous life to be collected in the future. It is a psychological state, a quality of mind, a reality that can be touched and experienced in this very life, in this very body. The word nirvana itself literally means to extinguish or to blow out, as one would blow out a candle flame. But what, precisely, is extinguished? It is not the self. It is not consciousness. It is not life itself. What is extinguished are the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance, the very flames of tanha that fuel the endless cycle of dukkha. The cessation of the cause leads to the cessation of the effect. It is a state of perfect mental health, a freedom so profound it is difficult to describe in ordinary language. For this reason, nirvana is often described by what it is not. Our language is built upon the world of conditioned experience, the world of cause and effect, of gain and loss, of coming and going. Nirvana is the unconditioned, and so it slips through the net of our concepts. So, we can speak of it in terms of absence, the freedom from the burdens we know so well. Imagine a state of mind free from the constant, agitating pull of craving, a mind that no longer desperately seeks the next pleasure or frantically avoids the next pain. Imagine a consciousness not clouded by the fog of anxious future planning or the heavy sediment of past regrets. Imagine a heart that is not constricted by resentment, jealousy, or fear. Imagine what it would feel like to no longer be at war with the present moment, to no longer resist reality. This is the peace of Nirodha. It is the end of the inner conflict. It is a deep, unshakable serenity that does not depend on whether things are going our way. It is a stability that is not contingent on health or wealth or the approval of others, because its source is not external. It is the natural state of the mind when the fires of thirst have been put out. We can understand this cessation more clearly by relating it back to the three faces of thirst we have already explored. When kama-tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures, ceases, it does not mean life becomes grey and joyless. Quite the opposite. It means you are finally free to truly enjoy experiences without being enslaved by them. You can listen to a beautiful symphony with your entire being, fully present for every note. And when the final note fades, you can let it go with a feeling of gratitude, not a feeling of lack or a desperate craving to hear it again. You can savor a delicious meal, and when it is finished, you are simply finished. The frantic, addictive quality of seeking is gone. You are no longer a hungry ghost, but a connoisseur of the present moment, able to appreciate beauty without needing to possess it. When bhavatana, the thirst for becoming, ceases, the exhausting, lifelong project of building and defending the ego comes to an end. The relentless pressure to be somebody, to prove your worth, to measure up, simply dissolves. Imagine the immense energy that is liberated when you no longer need to maintain a specific image of yourself. There is a profound relaxation into authenticity. You can act, speak, and live from a place of genuine being, rather than from a place of striving to become. The frantic insecurity is replaced by a quiet, unshakable confidence that isn't based on accomplishments, but on the simple reality of being. Comparison falls away, because the very self that was doing the comparing is seen as the illusion it is. And when vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-existence, ceases, the inner war against our own experience is over. This is perhaps the most profound freedom of all. When difficult emotions arise as sadness, fear, anger, grief, immediate, violent reaction to push them away, to numb them, to annihilate them, is no longer there. In its place is a vast, open, compassionate space of awareness. You develop the capacity to be with your own pain without being consumed by it. You can allow feelings to arise, to manifest, and to pass away naturally, like weather patterns moving through the sky of your mind. You are no longer fighting with reality. This cessation of inner resistance is the very definition of peace. A powerful parable is told to illustrate the urgency and meaning of this third noble truth. Imagine a large, rambling old house that is on fire. The timbers are cracking, the smoke is getting thicker, the heat is becoming unbearable. Inside the house, however, the inhabitants have lived there for so long that they have become accustomed to the conditions. They think the smoke is just a bit of fog. They think the heat is just a warm day. They spend their time frantically rearranging the furniture, trying to find a corner that is slightly less hot, complaining about the cracking noises, all the while completely oblivious to the fact that the entire structure is about to collapse and consume them. This house is samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and suffering, fueled by the fires of tanha. Then, a person from outside, someone who can see the flames licking at the roof, calls out to them. The house is on fire. It is not safe. There is a way out. Outside there is fresh air, solid ground, and safety. That call from outside, that proclamation of an escape route, is the third noble truth. The realization of nirvana, of nirodha, is not about finding a fireproof room within the burning building. It is not about redecorating your corner of the inferno to make it more comfortable. It is the radical, definitive act of leaving the house altogether. It is the escape from the conditioned world of suffering into the unconditioned state of safety, clarity, and peace. It is the realization that we do not have to live amidst the smoke and flames of our own reactive minds. An exit exists. The psychological power of this realization cannot be overstated. Without this third truth, the first two truths would be a crushing, nihilistic burden. They would paint a picture of a human being as a creature doomed to suffer from a disease with no cure. There would be no point in any effort, no reason for any path of practice. But the moment you know that an exit exists, everything changes. Imagine being a prisoner in a dark cell for years, and one day you see a key slide under the door. Even if you haven't yet reached the door, even if you don't yet know how to turn the lock, the very knowledge that the key is there transforms your entire reality. Despair is replaced by hope. Apathy is replaced by motivation. The effort required to crawl across the floor and reach for that key suddenly becomes profoundly meaningful. This is not a matter of blind faith. It is presented as a logical proposition. If A causes B, then the cessation of A must lead to the cessation of B. If the fire of craving, aversion, and ignorance is the direct cause of the smoke of suffering, then when that fire is extinguished, the smoke must clear. The third noble truth is the rational basis for hope. It assures us that our efforts will not be in vain. It gives us the courage to undertake what may seem like a difficult journey. It is the light at the end of the tunnel, which gives us the strength to walk through the darkness. We have now traveled from a stark diagnosis to a clear identification of the cause, and finally, to the breathtaking prognosis of a complete cure. We have seen that the prison has a key, that the burning house has an exit. The suffering we experience is not an essential part of who we are. It is a conditioned process that can be deconditioned. Freedom is not a distant dream, but a tangible possibility. And so, an urgent, practical, and all-important question naturally arises in the mind. It is the question that any person trapped in a burning house would ask upon hearing there is an exit. It is the question a prisoner would ask upon seeing the key. The question is, how? How do I get out? Where is the door? Which path leads to the cessation of suffering? What is the medicine that will cure this disease? This burning question leads us, finally and gratefully, to the fourth noble truth, the prescription itself, the detailed, practical, and noble path that leads to the end of suffering. We have arrived at the heart of the great physician's prescription. We have faced the diagnosis of dukkha. We have identified its root cause in tanha, and we have been given the life-altering prognosis that a cure, nirodha, is possible. The question that has been echoing in the silence is, how? How do we walk out of the burning house? How do we use the key to unlock our cell? The answer is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. This path is called the Noble Eightfold Path, or Aryo Atangiko Mago in Pali. It is a complete, practical, and profound blueprint for living, a guide that leads from the shores of confusion and anxiety to the far shore of liberation and peace. The word path can be misleading if we imagine it as a linear road with a clear beginning and end, where one step must be perfected before the next is taken. It is more helpful to think of the Eightfold Path as a braided rope, where 8 strong strands are woven together to create something far stronger than any single strand alone. Or, as the Buddha himself suggested, imagine it as a raft. If you wish to cross a great river of suffering to the other shore of safety, you must build a raft. This raft requires 8 essential components, 8 strong logs, all bound together. If one log is missing, the raft may become unstable. If several are missing, it will surely sink. All 8 factors are to be cultivated simultaneously, each one supporting and deepening all the others, creating a holistic and integrated way of being in the world. This path is also known as the middle way. The Buddha, in his own life, had experienced both extremes. As a prince, he lived a life of ultimate sensual indulgence. surrounded by every imaginable pleasure. As an ascetic, he practiced extreme self-mortification, starving his body and pushing it to the absolute limits of endurance. He found that neither extreme led to wisdom or freedom. The path to liberation, he discovered, was not in indulgence or in denial, but in a wise and skillful balance between them. The Eightfold Path is the very embodiment of this middle way. To make this comprehensive system easier to understand, the 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential trainings: the training in wisdom, the training in ethical conduct, and the training in mental discipline. We will walk through each one, remembering that they are all interconnected parts of a single living path. First is the group of wisdom, or prajna. This is the faculty of seeing and understanding, the compass that ensures we are heading in the right direction. It consists of 2 factors. The first is right view. This is the foundation of the entire path. It means having the right map, a clear and accurate understanding of the nature of reality. At its core, right view is the intellectual grasp of the 4 noble truths themselves. It is the understanding that there is suffering, that it has a cause, that it has an end, and that there is a path to that end. It is seeing the world through the lens of impermanence, anicca, unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and not self, anatta. It is the cognitive shift away from our delusions and toward a perspective aligned with how things truly are. Without right view, our efforts, however sincere, will be misguided, like a person trying to navigate an unknown country with a map of a different continent. The second factor of the wisdom group is right intention, sometimes translated as right thought or right resolve. Once we have the correct map, right intention determines our motivation for the journey. It is the purification of the heart's deepest aspirations. The Buddha spoke of 3 key aspects of right intention: the intention of renunciation, which is the intention to let go of our clinging and attachment; the intention of loving, kindness, which is the sincere wish for the well-being and happiness of all beings, without exception; and the intention of harmlessness, or compassion, which is the deep resolve to not cause suffering to any living creature, including ourselves. Right intention is the act of aligning our will with our wisdom, ensuring that our life is guided not by fear, greed, or hatred, but by clarity, generosity, and compassion. The second great training is in ethical conduct, or shila. This is where the path moves from understanding to action. It is how we conduct ourselves in the world in a way that is skillful and harmless, creating a stable and serene foundation for our mind. A mind agitated by guilt and remorse cannot become calm and concentrated. Shila is the practice of creating a life of integrity, and it consists of 3 factors. The third factor of the path is right speech. Our words have immense power, the power to heal or to harm, to build bridges or to erect walls. Right speech is the practice of using this power skillfully. It involves abstaining from 4 types of harmful speech. First, abstaining from false speech, from lies and deception. Second, abstaining from slanderous or divisive speech, from words that set people against one another. Third, abstaining from harsh speech, from insults, curses, and angry words that wound the heart. And fourth, abstaining from idle chatter, from meaningless gossip and chatter that distracts the mind and wastes precious time and energy. Instead, we cultivate speech that is truthful, kind, helpful, and spoken at the right time. The fourth factor is right action. This concerns our physical conduct. At its core, it is the practice of acting in ways that show respect for the life and well-being of others. Traditionally, this means abstaining from 3 actions: abstaining from taking life, from killing any living being, abstaining from taking what is not given, from stealing or dishonest acquisition, and abstaining from sexual misconduct, from engaging in sexuality in a way that is exploitative or harmful to ourselves or others. More broadly, right action is the embodiment of compassion. It is the commitment to move through the world with a gentle footprint, protecting life rather than destroying it, and acting with honesty and respect in all our affairs. The fifth factor is right livelihood. This brings the ethical training directly into our professional lives, the domain where we spend so much of our time and energy. It means earning a living in a way that is honorable and does not cause harm. This involves avoiding professions that are, by their nature, harmful to society or other beings. The classical examples include dealing in weapons, in human beings, in meat production, in poisons, or in intoxicants. In a modern context, we can extend this to include any work based on fraud or exploitation. Right livelihood encourages us to find a way to contribute our talents to the world that is aligned with our deepest values of compassion and integrity. Living in this way brings a deep sense of peace, knowing that our survival is not dependent on the suffering of others. The third and final training is in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the heart of the meditative path, the direct training of the mind itself. It is here that we develop the strength, stability, and clarity needed to see through our deepest illusions. This group also consists of 3 factors. The 6th factor is right effort. This is not about straining or forcing, but about applying a consistent, joyful, and skillful energy to the cultivation of our minds. It can be likened to the work of a wise gardener. The gardener undertakes 4 great efforts. They make an effort to prevent the seeds of weeds, unwholesome states like anger, jealousy, or greed from sprouting. They make an effort to abandon any weeds that have already sprouted. They make an effort to plant the seeds of beautiful flowers, wholesome states like kindness, generosity, and mindfulness. And they make an effort to tend to and nurture the flowers that are already blooming. This is the conscious and gentle art of purifying the mind. The 7th factor is right mindfulness. This may be the most well-known, and it is the absolute keystone of the entire path. Sati, the Pali word for mindfulness, means to remember to be present. It is the practice of maintaining a clear, non-judgmental, moment-to-moment awareness of our experience. This includes mindfulness of the body, of our feelings and sensations, of the mind and its thoughts, and of the fundamental principles of reality. It is the faculty that observes our clinging and our thirst as it happens. It is the clear light of awareness that allows us to see our habits instead of being unconsciously driven by them. This factor is so central, so vital, that it will form the core of our exploration in the sections to come. The 8th and final factor is right concentration. This is the result of the sustained practice of right effort and right mindfulness. As the mind is trained to remain in the present moment, it naturally becomes more calm, stable, and unified. Right concentration, or samadhi, is the ability to focus the mind on a single object or sensation without distraction. This unification of mind is not a trance-like state, but a state of heightened clarity and profound tranquility. When the mind becomes this stable and sharp, it becomes a powerful instrument of insight, capable of penetrating the deepest layers of reality and seeing directly the truth of impermanence and not self. These 8 factors, working in concert, form the complete prescription for the malady of dukkha. They are woven together in a beautiful synergy. A life of ethical conduct, shila, removes guilt and creates a stable foundation for the mind to practice concentration, samadhi. A concentrated mind becomes a powerful tool for developing penetrating wisdom, prajna. And as our wisdom deepens, it naturally informs our ethical conduct, making it more effortless and compassionate. Each strand of the rope strengthens every other strand. This is the blueprint for freedom, the raft to the other shore. And while all 8 logs are essential for the journey, the entire structure is bound together and held in place by the fiber of present moment awareness. It is to this essential, binding fiber, right mindfulness, that we will now turn our full attention. We have now arrived at the very heart of the Eightfold Path, the central pillar upon which all other factors are supported and given life. It is the 7th factor, right mindfulness, or samasati, in the entire lexicon of Buddhist thought that has permeated Western culture. Perhaps no word is more familiar than mindfulness. We see it on book covers, in magazine articles, in corporate wellness programs, and in smartphone apps. But its modern popularity can sometimes obscure its profound depth and its central role as a tool for liberation. Mindfulness is not a simple relaxation technique, nor is it a life hack for increased productivity. It is the master key that unlocks the chains of our unconscious habits. It is the clear, steady light of awareness that we learn to shine into the dark corners of our own minds. The Pali word sati, which we translate as mindfulness, also carries the meaning of to remember or recollection. This is a crucial insight. The practice of mindfulness is the practice of remembering to be present, remembering to come back from the labyrinth of our thoughts to the simple, direct reality of this very moment. So many of us live our lives in a state of virtual reality, our bodies in one place while our minds are lost somewhere else entirely. We drive a familiar route to work and arrive at our destination with no memory of the last 5 miles, lost in a daydream of a future conversation or a rerun of a past argument. We eat a delicious meal while scrolling through our phone, our eyes consuming digital content while our mouths chew and swallow on autopilot, without tasting a single bite. We sit with a friend or a partner, nodding and making the appropriate sounds, while our mind is 1,000 miles away, compiling a to-do list or worrying about a bill. This is the default state of the untrained mind. It is a state of perpetual distraction, a waking trance. We are almost never where we actually are. We are ghosts haunting our own lives, and this state of fractured presence is the fertile soil in which the seeds of dukkha take root and flourish. Mindfulness is the gentle, radical act of remembering to come home. To truly understand this, we must make a critical distinction between thinking about the present moment and actually being in the present moment. The thinking mind is a narrating mind. It provides a constant commentary on our experience. Let's say you are holding a cup of hot tea. The thinking mind says, "I am now holding a cup of tea. It's hot. I must be careful not to spill it. This is a nice cup. I wonder where it was made. I should probably drink it before it gets cold. I have so much to do after this." This inner monologue, while seemingly harmless, is still a form of distraction. It places a veil of concepts between you and the raw, direct experience. To be in the present moment is to shift from this narrating mind to the experiencing body. It is to feel, directly, the warmth of the ceramic against your palms. It is to see the subtle wisp of steam rising from the surface of the liquid. It is to notice the specific amber color of the tea. It is to bring the cup to your lips and feel the sensation of warmth, to register the unique aroma, to taste the complex flavors on your tongue. In those moments of pure, direct perception, the inner commentary falls away. There is no story. There is only the experience itself. This shift from thinking to being, from narrating to experiencing, is the essence of mindfulness. It is the gateway out of the prison of compulsive thought. But how do we cultivate this quality of being? The mind is like a wild animal, accustomed to roaming wherever it pleases. We cannot simply command it to be still. We need a gentle method to train it, a focus point to which we can return again and again. For thousands of years, practitioners have found the perfect tool for this training It is the breath. The breath is our most faithful companion, a process that is with us from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It is utterly portable. We don't need any special equipment to find it. It is always in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take a breath that is in the future, and it is relatively neutral, neither so exciting as to cause agitation, nor so dull as to immediately induce sleep. It is the perfect anchor for the wandering mind. The practice itself is deceptively simple. You begin by finding a comfortable and stable posture, sitting in a way that is both relaxed and alert. You can gently close your eyes, which helps to reduce external distractions. Then, you simply bring your attention to the physical sensation of your own breathing. You don't need to change your breath or breathe in a special way. You just observe it as it is. You might choose to rest your attention at the tip of the nostrils, feeling the cool sensation of the in-breath and the slightly warmer sensation of the out-breath. Or you might choose to place your awareness on the rise and fall of your abdomen or chest. The instruction is to simply feel the raw, physical sensations of each breath, moment by moment. Rest your attention on the breath, as a butterfly might rest on a flower lightly, gently, without force. And now comes the most important instruction of all. Inevitably, your mind will wander. A thought will arise, a memory will surface, a sound will catch your attention, and you will forget the breath. You will suddenly wake up and realize you've been lost in a long train of thought for several minutes. This is not a failure. This is not a sign that you are bad at meditation. This is simply what minds do. The practice, the actual work of mindfulness meditation, happens in the moment you realize you have wandered. In that moment, without any judgment, without any frustration or criticism of yourself, you gently acknowledge where the mind has been. Thinking, and then you kindly, gently guide your attention back to the sensation of the breath. This return is the essential movement of mindfulness. Each time you notice the mind has wandered and you bring it back, you are strengthening the muscle of awareness. Each return is a victory. It is a moment of remembering, a moment of coming home. This leads us to clearing up one of the most pervasive myths about meditation, the idea that its purpose is to empty the mind or to stop all thoughts. This is a recipe for frustration, because the nature of the mind is to produce thoughts, just as the nature of the heart is to beat. You cannot and should not try to violently suppress your thoughts. That only creates more tension. The practice of mindfulness is not about stopping the river of thought, but about changing your relationship to it. Imagine you are sitting on the bank of a river. Before practicing mindfulness, you were swept away in the current, tumbling over and over, tossed about by every thought, every emotion, every memory. You didn't even realize you were in a river. You thought you were the river. Mindfulness is the act of learning how to gracefully step out of the water and sit on the bank. From the bank, you can still see the river. You can watch all the thoughts, feelings, and sensations float by like leaves on the current. You see them clearly. You acknowledge their presence. There is a thought about work. There is a feeling of sadness. There is a memory from childhood. You see them, but you do not have to jump in after them. You let them come, and you let them go. In the space that opens up between you, the observer, and the stream of your thoughts, lies peace, wisdom, and freedom. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh spoke of this with profound simplicity when talking about the act of drinking a cup of tea. He said that if you are sitting and drinking tea, but you are thinking about your worries, your plans, or your regrets, then you are not truly drinking tea. You are, in fact, drinking your worries and your plans. The tea is only real for you. The experience is only available to you when you are 100% present with the act of drinking it. Your mind must be with your body. He would say, drink your tea, don't drink your projects. This simple teaching can be extended to every single moment of our lives. When you are washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. Feel the warm water on your hands, see the soap bubbles, hear the clink of the plates. When you are walking, just walk. Feel the sensation of your feet on the ground, the air on your skin. Every moment, no matter how mundane, becomes an opportunity to practice coming home, an opportunity to be fully alive. This is the power of mindfulness. It is the foundational skill, the master practice that makes genuine letting go possible. For how can you let go of a thought or a feeling if you are not even aware that you are caught by it? Mindfulness is the awareness that sees the clenching of the fist, and in the seeing, in that moment of clear recognition, the possibility of gently unclenching it is born. While this skill can be practiced informally throughout our day, to truly build the strength, stability, and depth of our awareness, it is immensely helpful to have a dedicated, formal period of training. It is here that we carve out time to systematically cultivate this quality of presence, to strengthen the muscle of attention. This leads us directly to the formal sitting practice that lies at the heart of the Zen tradition, the laboratory where we do the deep work of observing the mind. We have explored the vital practice of right mindfulness, the gentle art of remembering to be present in the flow of our daily lives. While we can practice this anywhere, at any time, there is an immense power in setting aside a dedicated period to cultivate this quality in a more formal, systematic way. Just as an athlete goes to a gymnasium to strengthen their body, or a scientist enters a laboratory to conduct experiments, we too can benefit from a dedicated space and time to train the mind. In the Zen tradition, this formal training ground is called Zazen, a Japanese term that simply means seated meditation. This is the crucible where we learn to sit with ourselves, to observe the wild, untamed nature of our own consciousness, and to cultivate the unshakable stability that lies beneath it all. The heart of Zazen, particularly in the Soto Zen school, is an approach called shikantaza, which can be translated as just sitting. This phrase is perhaps the most profound and challenging instruction of all. In a world that is relentlessly goal-oriented, a world that demands results, achievements, and progress, the invitation to just sit is truly radical. It means we sit without a gaining idea. We do not sit in order to achieve enlightenment, to have a mystical experience, to get rid of our thoughts, or to feel blissfully calm. We let go of all agendas. The purpose of sitting is simply to sit. The entire goal, the entire path, and the entire destination are contained within the simple, profound act of being fully present on the cushion for this one breath. This practice begins with the body. In Zen, the body and mind are not seen as two separate things, but as two aspects of a single reality. The posture of the body is the posture of the mind. Therefore, we establish our physical foundation with great care and attention. The traditional seat for Zazen is on a round cushion called a zafu, which helps to elevate the hips. You can sit in various cross-legged positions, such as the full lotus, half lotus, or Burmese style. But what is most important is not the specific posture, but the principle, creating a stable, triangular base with your knees and buttocks. For many, sitting cross-legged is difficult or painful. Zazen can be practiced just as effectively kneeling on a meditation bench, or even sitting upright in a straight-back chair with your feet flat on the floor. The aim is stability and an upright spine, not a painful contortion. Once you have found your stable base, you attend to the spine. It should be straight and upright, but not stiff or tense. Imagine your vertebrae are a stack of golden coins, balanced one on top of the other. Let your lower back curve inward naturally, Imagine a string gently pulling the crown of your head toward the sky, elongating your neck. Your chin should be slightly tucked in. This posture embodies a quality of dignity and alertness. Then, you place your hands in a specific position called the cosmic mudra. Your right hand rests in your lap, palm up. Your left hand rests in the palm of your right hand. The tips of your thumbs touch lightly, forming a beautiful, subtle oval. This mudra is like a barometer for your mind. If you become sleepy, the thumbs may droop. If your mind is tense and agitated, the thumbs may push up against each other. Keeping them lightly touching helps to unify your awareness and center your energy in your lower abdomen, a point of physical and energetic balance, known as the hara. Uniquely, in Zazen, the eyes are not closed. They are kept half open, with a soft, unfocused gaze directed at the floor about 2 or 3 feet in front of you. You are not looking at anything in particular. This practice has a profound wisdom. Closing the eyes can easily lead to drowsiness and a state of inner dreaminess, a retreat from the world. Keeping the eyes open, even slightly, keeps you present in the room, grounded in your environment. It reminds you that this practice is not about escaping from life, but about learning to be fully present within it. It is a quiet declaration that you are here, awake, and available to reality. With the posture established, you can take a few slow, deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, consciously releasing any tension you might be holding in your jaw, your shoulders, or your belly. Allow your body to settle. Now, let your breathing return to its natural rhythm. This posture is your laboratory. It is the container for your practice. Now, what do we do with the mind? The instruction is simply this. Having let go of all goals, you bring your awareness to the totality of your present moment experience. You are just sitting. Your attention may rest lightly on the breath, feeling the rise and fall of the abdomen, but your awareness is wider than that. It includes the feeling of the air on your skin, the points of contact between your body and the cushion or chair, the subtle sounds in the room. You become an impartial witness to the unfolding of reality, moment by moment, and inevitably, this reality will include the arising of thoughts. Here we meet the great challenge and the great opportunity of Zazen. The mind will wander. It will produce thoughts, memories, plans, and fantasies. This is its nature. The practice of just sitting is not to fight this. It is not to judge it or try to stop it. When a thought arises, you simply notice it. You see it. You acknowledge its presence without getting on board and writing it into a story. You let the thought be, and you let it go. You do not push it away, nor do you cling to it. You allow your thoughts to arise and pass away like clouds drifting across the vast, open sky of your awareness. The sky does not cling to the white clouds or resist the dark ones. It simply allows them all to pass. Your mind in Zazen is that sky. Of course, this is far from easy. We will encounter many guests during our sitting period, common challenges that are a universal part of the process. One of the first is often physical pain. The knees may start to ache, the back may feel strained. The first instruction is to bring mindful awareness to the sensation itself. Instead of a story, my knee is killing me. I can't take this. I must be doing it wrong. You observe the raw sensation. There is pressure, there is heat, there is tightness. By stripping away the narrative, the experience often becomes more manageable. However, Zazen is not an endurance contest. If a pain becomes truly sharp and injurious, the skillful response is to, mindfully and slowly, adjust your posture. This is not failure, it is wisdom. Another frequent guest is sleepiness. The mind becomes dull and foggy. The head begins to nod. The posture can help, gently straightening the spine or focusing more intently on the physical sensations of the breath can bring back alertness. But here too, the primary practice is to simply be aware of the state. Sleepiness is present. Simply noticing it without judgment often robs it of its power. The most persistent guest, for most of us, is restlessness, what is often called the monkey mind. The mind leaps from branch to branch, from one thought to the next, seemingly without end. It can feel like a chaotic storm. It is at this point that many people believe they are failing at meditation. This is the most critical misunderstanding to overcome. You are not failing. You are simply seeing, perhaps for the first time, the true, untrained state of your own mind. The practice is not to have a calm mind. The practice is to be aware of your restless mind without adding a second layer of judgment and frustration. Every single time you notice that your mind has been carried away by a thought, and you gently and kindly return your attention to your sitting posture and your breath, you are doing the practice perfectly. That return, that moment of remembering, is the golden essence of Zazen. There is a famous Zen story about a young monk who was constantly meditating. His master came to him and asked, "What are you trying to accomplish with all this sitting?" The monk replied, "I am sitting in order to become a Buddha." The next day, the master found the monk and sat down beside him. He picked up a ceramic roof tile and began to polish it vigorously with a stone. After a long time, the monk asked, "Master, what are you doing?" The master replied, "I am polishing this tile to make it into a mirror." The monk, perplexed, said, "But master, no amount of polishing will ever turn a simple tile into a mirror." The master smiled and said, "And no amount of sitting will ever make you into a Buddha." The wisdom of Zazen is not found in a future goal. It is found in the act itself. The value is not in what you get from it. The value is the sitting. This is our laboratory. This is our training. In the profound stillness of Zazen, we are given the opportunity to observe the raw material of our experience. We see thoughts emerge from nowhere. We see how they hook our attention and pull us into their narratives. We see feelings arise and pass away. We see the constant, flickering, impermanent nature of our own consciousness. This intimate, first-hand knowledge, cultivated in silence, is what gives us the skill and the wisdom to work with our minds in the midst of our active, noisy lives. It is here we learn to recognize the chains of thought, not as solid realities, but as transparent phantoms. And it is from this seeing that the art of letting them go truly begins. Within the silent laboratory of Zazen, we make a fundamental discovery. We observe, with undeniable clarity, that the mind's nature is to produce thoughts. They arise, unbidden, a relentless stream of commentary, images, memories, and plans. For most of our lives, we have been completely identified with this stream. We have believed that we are this inner voice. It is the narrator of our lives, and we have taken its narration as gospel truth. This section is about learning to take the most radical and liberating step of all, to question this fundamental assumption. It is about learning the art of letting go of thoughts, not by fighting them, but by fundamentally changing our relationship to them. It begins with the profound realization that you are not the thought. You are the awareness that is aware of the thought. Imagine your mind is a vast, open, boundless sky. Throughout your life, you have been fixated on the weather. When the clouds are white and puffy, you feel happy. When the sky darkens with storm clouds of anger or fear, you feel miserable. You have spent all of your energy trying to control the weather, to push away the storm clouds and desperately cling to the sunny days. But the weather is uncontrollable. Mindfulness and the art of letting go is about realizing that you are not the weather, you are the sky. The sky itself is never harmed by the storm. It is never stained by the darkest clouds. Its essential nature is one of spacious, peaceful, pristine awareness. The clouds of thought and emotion arise within the sky. They linger for a time, and they inevitably pass away. The sky remains. The practice is to learn to rest in your sky-like nature, to allow the clouds to come and go without identifying with them. This state of identification with our thoughts is known in modern psychology as cognitive fusion. We are fused to our mental commentary. An anxious thought appears, "What if I fail?" And we immediately conclude, "I am anxious. I am a failure." A critical thought appears, "I'm not good enough," and we take it as a definitive statement of our worth. We don't experience these as fleeting mental events. We experience them as literal truths about who we are. This fusion is the very mechanism that gives our thoughts their power to create suffering. A thought, in itself, is nothing more than a flicker of electrochemical energy in the brain. It is a puff of smoke. It has no inherent substance, no intrinsic reality. Where was that thought before it appeared? Where does it go when it vanishes? It is our belief, our attention, our fusion with the thought that gives it weight and momentum. It's like a movie screen, believing it is the terrifying monster being projected onto it. The practice of letting go is the screen realizing, "I am the screen." The monster is just a temporary, flickering pattern of light. To break this fusion, we must see our thoughts for what they are, mental events, not objective facts. When the thought, "This is a disaster," arises, instead of being swept away by it, we can learn to see it with a bit of distance. The mind is producing a thought about disaster. This subtle shift in language and perspective is monumental. It introduces a space between the observer and the observed. In that space, freedom is born. You are no longer the thought. You are the one who is noticing the thought. This is the beginning of disidentification. You come to realize that thoughts are impersonal, conditioned phenomena. They arise due to countless causes and conditions: what you ate for lunch, a conversation you had yesterday, a deep-seated childhood memory. They are not yours in any ultimate sense. They are simply mental weather passing through. So, how do we practically cultivate this skill? How do we learn to sit on the riverbank and watch the stream of thoughts flow by without jumping in? The first step is to embrace the sky-like mind. When you are sitting in meditation, or even during a quiet moment in your day, you can consciously invite this feeling of spaciousness. Feel your awareness as something vast and open. When a thought enters this space, simply let it be there. There is no need to do anything about it. Your only task is to not get caught up in its storyline. A wonderfully effective and gentle technique for cultivating this is called labeling or noting. When you notice your mind has been carried away by a thought, you can apply a soft, one-word mental label. It is not an analysis, just a simple recognition. If you find yourself lost in a detailed fantasy about your upcoming vacation, you can gently note planning. If you are caught in a loop of worry about a financial issue, you can note worrying. If a memory from the past surfaces, you can note remembering. If the mind is criticizing your meditation practice, you can note judging. This simple act is incredibly powerful. First, it immediately breaks the fusion. In order to label a thought as worrying, you must be in the position of the observer, not the worrier. Second, it non-judgmentally acknowledges the thought's presence, which we will see is crucial. And third, over time, it reveals the repetitive and often impersonal patterns of the mind. You begin to see, there's that old worrying habit again, almost as you would greet a familiar but slightly troublesome neighbor. After you have gently noted the thought, the next step is to consciously and kindly guide your attention back to your anchor in the present moment. For most, this will be the physical sensation of the breath. Feel the rise and fall of your abdomen. Feel the air at the tip of your nostrils. This act of returning grounds you, taking you out of the abstract, conceptual world of thought and placing you back into the solid, tangible reality of your direct sensory experience. This cycle, getting lost in thought, noticing you are lost, gently labeling the thought, and kindly returning to the breath is the fundamental rhythm of the practice. It is a dance of awareness. This brings us to a vital distinction, the difference between allowing and suppressing. Many of us, when we first encounter our difficult or negative thoughts, have a natural impulse to fight them. We think, I shouldn't be thinking this, and we try to shove the thought down, to force it out of our minds. This is suppression, and it is a battle you will never win. In fact, it has the opposite effect. What we resist persists. Try this simple experiment. For the next 10 seconds, do not, under any circumstances, think of a pink elephant. Do not picture its large, floppy ears or its wrinkly gray skin painted pink. What happens? The mind is immediately filled with images of a pink elephant. Suppression is a form of resistance, and resistance is a form of energetic attention. By fighting a thought, you are inadvertently feeding it, giving it more power and importance. Letting go is the practice of allowing. Allowing does not mean you have to agree with your thoughts or like them. It simply means you stop fighting the fact that they are currently present in your mind. It is a radical act of non-resistance when a dark, stormy thought cloud appears in the sky of your mind. You don't try to shoot it down or pretend it isn't there. You simply allow it to be. You let it float by. You withdraw your energy from it. You don't serve it tea. You don't engage it in conversation. You simply let it pass. And what you will discover, through your own direct experience, is that thoughts that are met with this kind of spacious, non-resistant awareness lose their power. They are like waves that are allowed to crash on the shore. They naturally recede back into the ocean from which they came. When you stop fighting your own mind, you discover a peace that was there all along. The skill of letting go of thoughts is not an innate talent. It is a skill cultivated through patient and compassionate practice. In the beginning, it can feel like trying to tame a wild horse. The mind will seem more chaotic than ever, precisely because you are finally paying attention to it. But with persistence, the rhythm of noticing and returning becomes more familiar, more graceful. You will find that you are able to catch yourself earlier and earlier in the cycle of being lost in thought. A space begins to open up in your life, a moment of choice between a stimulus, an external event, or an internal thought, and your response. In that space, you can choose to believe the thought and get swept away, or you can choose to see it as a passing cloud and remain grounded in the peace of your own awareness. This is the foundational skill of inner freedom, the ability to observe our own mental stream without being drowned by it, cultivated in the stillness of meditation, is the tool we will now use to address some of the stickiest, heaviest, and most powerful forms of thought we carry, the stories and regrets that chain us to our past. Having learned to sit on the bank of the mind's river, watching the steady stream of thoughts flow by, we begin to notice that some logs are heavier than others. Some get snagged on the rocks, creating turbulent eddies of emotion that can pull us back into the current. These are the thoughts of the past. Of all the clouds that drift through the sky of our awareness, those that carry the scent of yesterday are often the most persistent, the most emotionally charged, and the most difficult to let go. They come in many forms: the dark clouds of regret and guilt, the stormy clouds of old hurts and resentments, and even the deceptively beautiful, sun-drenched clouds of nostalgia. To be free, we must learn to apply the art of letting go to this powerful, ghost-like realm. The first and most crucial step in this process is a profound reorientation of our perspective. We must understand, deeply and truly, that the past does not exist. It is not a real place that we can visit. It has no power on its own. The past exists in only one location: as a collection of thoughts, images, and stories arising in our minds, right now, in this present moment. The pain of a past betrayal is not happening in the past. It is happening now, through the act of remembering. The shame of a past mistake is not back there. It is a feeling being generated in your body, right now, by a thought you are believing. The past is a ghost, and its only power is the power we give it through our current attention. To be haunted is to be in a constant, present moment conversation with a phantom. The practice of letting go of the past is the practice of learning to stop talking to ghosts. We give these ghosts a home by building our very identity out of their stories. We take the fluid, ever-changing process of our lives and freeze-frame certain moments, building a solid-seeming statue of me. I am the person who grew up poor. I am the person who was betrayed by a friend. I am the one who made that terrible business decision. We define ourselves by these scars. We carry them not as memories, but as identities. In doing so, we turn our lives into a museum, curating our own pain, polishing our old grievances, and living in the shadow of who we once were. We forget that a memory is not a perfect video recording of an event. It is a creative reconstruction, a story that is subtly rewritten every single time we tell it. By clinging to these stories, we deny ourselves the freedom to be who we are right now, a being who is new and fresh in every single moment. This clinging to the past takes the form of a particularly corrosive mental habit known as rumination. Rumination is the act of compulsively chewing on past events, turning them over and over in the mind. It is a mental feedback loop, a closed circuit of thought that generates immense suffering. The mind, in its misguided attempt to solve our pain, believes that if it just replays the hurtful event one more time, if it just dissects the mistake from one more angle, it can somehow find a new piece of information, fix what was broken, or magically change the outcome. But this is a fool's errand. You cannot solve a past problem. You cannot unscramble a scrambled egg. All rumination does is reactivate the original emotional pain, again and again. It is the act of willingly reopening a wound, preventing it from ever truly healing. We become our own tormentors, the jailer and the prisoner, locked in the same cell. We sacrifice the aliveness and potential of the present moment to sift through the cold ashes of a time that is gone forever. So, how do we break free from this prison of the past? The master key is a practice that can be both terrifying and liberating. The practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness, like mindfulness, is a word often shrouded in misconception. It is vital to understand what it is not. Forgiveness is not condoning or excusing a harmful action. It does not mean you are saying what you did was okay. It does not mean you must forget what happened or erase the memory. And it absolutely does not mean that you must reconcile with or even speak to the person who harmed you. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to the other person. It is an act of profound self-liberation. It is a gift you give to yourself. To forgive is to cancel a debt that only you believe is still owed. It is the conscious decision to stop carrying the heavy, toxic burden of anger, resentment, and the desire for revenge in your own heart. It is the realization that holding on to this bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. When we refuse to forgive, we remain chained to the person who hurt us. They occupy a space in our minds, rent-free, continuing to cause us pain long after they have left our lives. Forgiveness is the act of cutting that chain. It is a declaration of emotional independence. It is saying, what happened was painful, but I will no longer allow the memory of that pain to poison my present moment. I release you from the prison of my anger, not for your sake, but for mine. Often, the most difficult person to forgive is ourselves. We can be haunted for years by the ghosts of our own mistakes, by shame over things we did or failed to do. We replay our cringe-worthy moments, our failures of integrity, our moments of unkindness, and we punish ourselves relentlessly. Forgiving yourself is the ultimate act of self-compassion. It requires acknowledging your own human fallibility. It means accepting that, at that time in the past, you acted with the level of awareness, wisdom, and resources you had available to you. Perhaps you would act differently now, and that is a sign of growth. Self-forgiveness is letting go of the arrogant belief that you should have known then what you know now. It is the quiet, compassionate act of letting yourself off the hook, of allowing your past self to be imperfect, and resolving to bring more wisdom and kindness to your present actions. A beautiful Zen story illustrates this principle perfectly. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river where the current was strong. A beautiful young woman was standing there, hesitating, afraid to cross. In those times, monks took strict vows to never touch a woman. Without a word, the senior monk walked up to the woman, hoisted her onto his back, waded across the turbulent river, and gently set her down on the other side. He then continued his journey. The junior monk was aghast. He followed his master, his mind in turmoil. For hours, he walked in agitated silence, replaying the scene over and over. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "Master, how could you do that? We are monks. We are forbidden by our vows to even touch a woman, and yet you carried her across the river." The senior monk looked at his young companion with a calm, gentle expression. "I left the woman by the riverbank hours ago," he said. "Are you still carrying her?" This is the question we must ask ourselves. What are we still carrying? The insult from a co-worker last week? The betrayal from a friend 5 years ago? The mistake we made in our 20s? We are all like the junior monk, carrying the ghosts of our past long after the events are over, allowing them to burden our steps and poison our peace. The practice is to learn to leave them on the riverbank. We do this by applying the tools we have been cultivating. When we are sitting in meditation, or even in the middle of our day, we use our mindfulness to notice when the mind has traveled back in time. We see the story of the past arise. We can gently label it, remembering or regret. We feel the emotion it brings into our body, the tightness in the chest, the heat of anger, the hollow ache of sadness. We meet these thoughts and feelings with the spaciousness of the sky-like mind. We allow them to be there without judgment, and then, with the compassion of forgiveness, we gently release our grip and return our attention to the breath, to the present moment, to the only reality we ever truly have. We put the woman down, again and again and again. Each time is an act of liberation. Each time, our load becomes a little lighter, and our steps become a little more free. Having explored the dense, heavy clouds of the past and the art of letting them drift by, we now turn our attention to the other direction in which the mind habitually flees from the present. If the past is a ghost that haunts us, the future is a phantom that we relentlessly chase or run from. It is a shimmering mirage on the horizon, a land of pure speculation, where we project all of our deepest hopes and our most terrifying fears. We live with a persistent, low-grade hum of anxiety, a feeling that our true lives have not yet begun, that peace and happiness are waiting for us just around the corner after we get the promotion, after we find the perfect partner, after the kids are grown, after we retire. This constant forward-leaning, this living in a state of what if, is the other great escape from the reality of the here and now. It is the trap of tomorrow, and it is a prison as confining as the prison of yesterday. The primary mechanism of this trap is the mental habit we call worry. Worry feels important. It feels productive. When we worry, our minds are active. buzzing with scenarios and strategies. It feels as if we are doing something about a potential problem, as if we are preparing for a threat. But this feeling is a profound illusion. Worry is the act of trying to solve a problem that does not exist. The future has not happened. It is a realm of infinite possibilities, and to worry is to pick one or two negative possibilities out of that infinity and suffer from them as if they were real. It is a dress rehearsal for a catastrophe that, in all likelihood, will never occur. It is the mind drawing terrifying monsters in the margins of a blank map and then becoming frightened of its own drawings. All of this mental effort, all of this emotional turmoil is expended on a fiction. The cost of this fiction is devastatingly real. When the mind is caught in a loop of anxious worry, the body responds as if the threat were immediate and physical. It releases a cascade of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. The heart rate increases, the muscles tighten, the jaw clenches. We are physically preparing for a fight or a flight from a danger that exists only in our imagination. This state of chronic, low-level activation is mentally and physically exhausting. It impairs our immune system, disrupts our sleep, and drains our vitality. More profoundly, it robs us of the only life we actually have. When we are lost in worrying about tomorrow, we cannot taste the food we are eating today. We cannot hear the words our loved one is speaking to us now. We cannot feel the warmth of the sun on our skin in this moment. We sacrifice the tangible reality of the present for the anxious phantoms of a fabricated future. It is here that we must draw a crucial distinction, for letting go of the future is not the same as abdicating responsibility for it. There is a vast difference between useless, circular worrying and wise, skillful planning. The difference lies in where the activity is centered. Wise planning is a present moment activity. It is calm, rational, and grounded in the facts at hand. It involves looking clearly at your current situation, setting a conscious intention for the future, and then taking concrete, skillful actions in the present that make a positive outcome more likely. For example, planning for a presentation involves researching your topic now, organizing your slides now, and practicing your speech now. The focus is entirely on what can be done in this moment. Worrying, by contrast, is a future-oriented emotional spiral. After the planning is done, worry takes over. It is the obsessive loop of, what if they don't like it? What if I forget my words? What if the projector fails? It is not focused on present action, but on imagining future failure. Planning is constructive. It builds a foundation for success. Worry is deconstructive. It builds a foundation for anxiety. Planning is empowering. It focuses on what you can control. Worry is paralyzing. It obsesses over what you cannot. Learning to distinguish between these two modes is a vital life skill. The practice is to do the planning that is necessary, to take the skillful actions that are available to you in this moment, and then to consciously let go of the outcome. You do your part, and then you allow the future to unfold as it will. This leads us to the heart of the matter, our deep-seated intolerance for uncertainty. We worry because we are terrified of the unknown. The mind craves certainty, security, and predictability. It wants a guarantee that things will turn out the way we want them to. And so, we spend our lives trying to nail down the future, to control the uncontrollable, to force the vast, chaotic, and beautiful river of life to flow in the neat, straight channel we have dug for it. This resistance to the fundamental nature of reality is the very source of our anxiety. Life is, by its very nature, uncertain. To be alive is to be vulnerable. To demand certainty from an uncertain universe is a recipe for constant frustration and fear. The path of wisdom invites us to a radical reimagining of this relationship. It suggests that peace is to be found not in achieving certainty, but in becoming intimate with uncertainty. It is about learning to relax into the not knowing. This is not a passive resignation or a cynical apathy. It is an active, courageous, and deeply relaxing embrace of life as it is. It is letting go of our white-knuckled grip on a preferred outcome and opening our hand to the full spectrum of what life may bring. When we are no longer shackled by the need for a specific future, we become flexible, adaptable, and resilient. We are free to respond to what actually happens, rather than being constantly disappointed that it is not what we had planned. We trade the brittle security of our expectations for the fluid strength of our presence. A timeless Taoist parable illustrates this wisdom with beautiful simplicity. There was an old farmer who had a magnificent stallion. One day, the horse ran away. All the neighbors came to console him. "Such bad luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A week later, the stallion returned, leading a herd of wild horses with him. The neighbors gathered again, this time to congratulate him. "Such good luck," they exclaimed. The farmer replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came once more. "Such terrible bad luck," they said, shaking their heads. The farmer calmly responded, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A few weeks later, the emperor's army marched through the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a war they would likely not survive. The farmer's son, with his broken leg, was the only one spared. This story perfectly captures the folly of our anxious predictions. We see such a tiny sliver of reality that we cannot possibly know the true nature of any event. What appears to be a disaster may be the seed of a great blessing. What appears to be a stroke of luck may lead to unforeseen trouble. The wise farmer's refrain, "Who knows?" is the mantra of a mind that is at peace with uncertainty. It is a mind that has let go of the need to label and judge every event, and instead chooses to meet life with an open, curious, and trusting presence. When we look closely, we see that our obsession with the past and our anxiety about the future are two sides of the same coin. Both are a form of resistance to the present moment. Both are fueled by a single, powerful, and deeply ingrained habit of the mind: the desperate need to be in control. We ruminate on the past in an attempt to control its meaning. We worry about the future in an attempt to control its outcome. This fundamental desire to manage, manipulate, and predict the flow of life is the ultimate source of our inner tension. To find true peace, we must therefore turn our attention to this deepest habit and learn the art of letting go of the very illusion of control itself. We have journeyed through the phantom realms of the past and the future, seeing how our minds cling to what is gone and grasp at what is yet to come. We have seen that regret for yesterday and anxiety for tomorrow are two of the greatest thieves of our present moment peace. Now, we drill down to the very bedrock of this behavior, to the fundamental motivation that drives our excursions into these non-existent lands. Beneath our attachment to the past and our fear of the future lies a single, powerful, and deeply ingrained human urge: the desperate need for control. This need is the silent engine humming beneath so much of our daily stress. It is the ego's master project. We operate under the grand illusion that we are the chief executive officer of reality, and that if we just plan meticulously enough, work hard enough, and worry strategically enough, we can manage the universe and bend it to our will. We live our lives with a white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel, believing we are in command of the vehicle and the road. The slightest unexpected traffic jam, the slightest detour, the slightest bit of unforeseen weather, sends us into a state of frustration, blame, and anxiety. We are exhausted, not because the journey of life is inherently difficult, but because we are investing enormous, unsustainable amounts of energy into trying to control a process that is fundamentally, magnificently, and beautifully uncontrollable. The beginning of wisdom is to make a clear and honest assessment of what we can and cannot control. This distinction, echoed in many wisdom traditions, is the key to reclaiming our energy and our peace. Imagine two concentric circles. The outer circle contains everything that is ultimately beyond our direct control. This is a vast circle. It includes the weather, the economy, the political climate, and the aging of our bodies. Critically, it includes other people. We cannot control what they think, what they say, what they feel, or what they do. Their actions arise from their own complex web of causes and conditions. The outer circle also contains the past, which is sealed, and the ultimate shape of the future, which is unknowable. To invest our emotional energy in trying to manipulate the contents of this vast outer circle is the very definition of futility. It is like shouting at the clouds to stop raining. Now, imagine a much smaller, inner circle. This circle contains everything that is within our complete and total control. What resides here? Not much, but what is here is everything that matters. Within this inner circle lie our intentions, our thoughts, our judgments, our responses, and our actions in this present moment. We cannot control the fact that someone speaks to us with harsh words, but we have absolute control over whether we respond with equal harshness or with quiet composure. We cannot control a sudden health diagnosis, but we have absolute control over the attitude of courage or despair with which we meet it. We cannot control the traffic, but we have absolute control over whether we use that time to fume with impatience or to simply breathe and listen to music. Our true power does not lie in shaping the external world, but in mastering our own inner world. The great spiritual pivot is to withdraw our frantic investment in the uncontrollable outer circle and focus our full attention on cultivating the inner one. This shift doesn't diminish our power. It focuses it where it can actually have an effect. So why do we cling so desperately to the illusion of control? The need is born from the insecurity of the ego, the constructed self. The ego, as we have seen, is not a solid entity. It is a fragile narrative, a story of me that requires constant validation to maintain its sense of existence. Control is the ego's favorite tool for self-validation. When things go according to my plan, the ego feels powerful, competent, and real. It takes the credit. But when things deviate from the plan, as they always do, the ego feels threatened. Its fragility is exposed. This perceived threat manifests as frustration, blame, anger, and victimhood. It lashes out, seeking someone or something to hold responsible for thwarting its will. Life, from this perspective, is a constant battle between the ego's agenda and the universe's unfolding. The wisdom of letting go invites us to a different way of being, a way that is less like a battle and more like a dance. The controlling ego wants to know all the steps in advance, to lead at all times, to force the music to fit its predetermined choreography. The wise mind, the mind that has learned to let go of control, learns to follow. It listens to the music of reality as it is playing in this moment and responds with grace, spontaneity, and skill. This harmonious way of acting has a name in the Taoist tradition, a concept that fits perfectly within Zen. It is called Wu Wei. Wu Wei is often translated as non-doing or effortless action, but it does not mean passivity or laziness. It is the art of acting in a way that is completely aligned with the natural flow of things without struggle or resistance. Think of a master surfer. She does not try to control the ocean. That would be absurd. She does not command the wave to be a certain height or to break in a certain way. Instead, she studies the wave, she feels its energy, she understands its nature, and she positions herself to ride its immense power with minimal effort and maximum skill. She is not fighting the wave, she is in perfect harmony with it. This is Wu Wei. A gardener practices Wu Wei when they plant according to the seasons and the nature of the soil, not demanding that tomatoes grow in winter. A skilled artisan practices Wu Wei when their hands move with an intuitive grace, no longer thinking, but simply allowing the creation to flow through them. It is action that arises from a place of deep listening and surrender, not from a place of forceful, egoic will. It is the recognition that the greatest power comes not from pushing the river, but from learning to swim with its current. There is a profound and simple story from the Taoist sage Zhuangzi that encapsulates this entire teaching. It is the parable of the empty boat. Imagine a man is taking his boat out on a river. As he is crossing, another boat emerges from the thick morning mist and collides with his. If the man looks up and sees that there is another person in that boat, he will be filled with anger. He will shout, he will curse, he will blame the other person for their carelessness, their stupidity. His mind will be consumed with righteous indignation. His entire sense of peace will be shattered by this event, this violation of his perceived control over his journey. Now, imagine the exact same scene. The man is in his boat. Another boat emerges from the mist and strikes his. But this time, when he looks up, he sees that the other boat is empty. It has simply come untied from its moorings and is drifting freely in the current. Can he get angry? At whom would he shout? To what would he assign blame? His entire reaction changes. There is no anger, no indignation. There is only the practical reality of the situation. He simply takes up his oar, pushes the empty boat away, and skillfully continues on his journey. The obstacle is the same. The only difference is the presence or absence of someone to blame. Zhuangzi's lesson is this: most of the events and people that bump into us in life are, in essence, empty boats. They are drifting according to their own currents of cause and effect, their own conditioning, their own unseen struggles. Our anger, our frustration, our feeling of being wronged is a choice we make. It arises from the ego, the someone in our own boat who feels personally affronted. The practice of letting go of control is the practice of emptying our own boat. It is the practice of letting go of the self-important, easily offended ego. When our boat is empty, we are no longer victims of circumstance. We become master navigators, capable of responding to the inevitable bumps and collisions of life with wisdom, skill, and an unshakable peace. To let go of control is therefore not an act of weakness, but an act of supreme strength and intelligence. It is the decision to stop wasting our life force on a battle we can never win, and to instead pour that energy into cultivating a mind that is resilient, peaceful, and free. Yet, even with this understanding, the habit of the ego is strong. When our will is thwarted, when another boat bumps into ours, a particularly fiery and potent emotion often arises automatically. This emotion is anger. To continue our journey toward peace, we must look this powerful emotion directly in the eye and learn the specific art of letting it go. We have explored the illusion of control and the wisdom of navigating life's river by emptying our own boat. But what happens in that heated, visceral moment when another boat slams into ours and we look up to see a face we can blame? What happens when our will is thwarted, our boundaries are crossed, or our fragile ego feels profoundly threatened? In that moment, a fire ignites. It is a powerful, seductive, and often overwhelming energy. It is the emotion of anger. Of all the mental states we are invited to let go of, anger can feel the most justified, the most necessary, and the most difficult to release. It rises up with a feeling of righteousness, a surge of energy that convinces us of its absolute necessity. But the wisdom traditions offer a starkly different perspective, encapsulated in a powerful image. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This section is about learning the courageous art of dropping the coal. To begin, we must reframe our understanding of anger itself. Our first mistake is to see anger as an enemy to be vanquished. A more skillful view is to see anger as a messenger, albeit a very loud and often clumsy one. Like a fire alarm shrieking in the middle of the night, its presence is jarring and unpleasant, but its purpose is to signal something important. Anger often arises to tell us that a personal value has been violated, a boundary has been crossed, or a deep-seated need is not being met. To simply suppress it without listening to its message is like disabling the fire alarm while the house burns down. Anger is often a secondary emotion, a protective mask for something more vulnerable underneath. Beneath the hard, hot shell of anger, we will almost always find the softer, cooler emotions of fear, hurt, or sadness. It is the ego's primary bodyguard. When the self feels small, powerless, or wounded, it deploys anger as a show of force, creating an illusion of strength and control to mask its own vulnerability. The second mistake is to believe that anger is inherently bad or sinful. From a Zen perspective, anger, at its core, is simply energy, a powerful, neutral surge of energy moving through the body. The energy itself is not the problem. The problem lies in our unskillful and unconscious relationship to it. Broadly, we react to this energy in one of two ways. The first is suppression. We are taught that anger is negative or unspiritual, so we deny its existence. We swallow it. We push it down into the dark basement of our consciousness, pretending it isn't there. But suppressed energy does not disappear. It curdles and transforms into other poisons: resentment, cynicism, depression, and even physical illness. The second habitual reaction is unskillful expression. We become completely identified with the energy and allow it to possess us. We lash out, speaking words that wound, taking actions that cause irreparable harm to our relationships and our own peace of mind. We become the very person throwing the hot coal. The path of wisdom offers a third way, a middle path between suppression and reckless expression. This is the path of mindful observation. The first step in this third way is to create a pause. This is where all our practice in mindfulness pays its greatest dividend. Through meditation, we cultivate the ability to witness our own inner states without being immediately swept away by them. When you feel the first flicker of anger, the heat rising in your face, the tightening in your chest, the clenching of your fists, the practice is to notice it as it arises. This noticing creates a tiny gap, a moment of sacred pause between the stimulus and your habitual response. In this gap lies your entire freedom. Instead of immediately lashing out, you have the opportunity to make a conscious choice. In that pause, the choice is to turn the spotlight of your awareness inward instead of outward. Our habit is to fixate on the external trigger. He did this to me. She said that. This situation is unfair. This external focus only serves to pour more fuel on the fire by rehearsing the story of our victimhood. The mindful practice is to withdraw our attention from the story and place it directly on the raw, physical sensations of the anger itself. What does anger actually feel like in your body, stripped of its narrative? Get curious. Where is it located? Is it a burning sensation in your stomach? A pulsing pressure behind your eyes? A vibration of energy in your arms and legs? Can you explore its texture, its temperature, its vibration, without judgment? Can you breathe into the center of that physical sensation? We are not breathing into it to make it go away, but simply to be with it, to hold it in a vast, kind, compassionate awareness. You are treating the anger not as an enemy, but as a frightened child who needs your calm, steady presence. When you do this, something miraculous happens. The anger, deprived of the fuel of your stories and met with the cool water of your awareness, begins to lose its intensity. You see it for what it is, an impermanent storm of energy that arises, peaks, and, if you allow it to, passes away. While mindful observation is the crucial first aid for anger in the moment, the long-term work is to change the very soil of the mind, making it less fertile for the seeds of anger to grow in the first place. The supreme antidote to the poison of anger and resentment is the cultivation of its direct opposite, loving, kindness, or metta. Metta is not a sentimental or romantic emotion. It is a steady, unconditional goodwill, a sincere wish for the well-being of others. It is a warmth of the heart that we can cultivate intentionally. The practice is simple and systematic. In a quiet moment, you begin with yourself. You offer these phrases of kindness to your own heart. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. After a time, you bring to mind a dear friend or loved one, someone for whom it is easy to feel affection, and you extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Then, you bring to mind a neutral person, someone you see in your daily life, but have no strong feelings about, perhaps a cashier at the grocery store. You offer them the same wishes. And then comes the most challenging and most transformative step. You bring to mind the person who is the object of your anger, the one who has hurt you. And as best you can, you extend the same wishes of loving kindness to them. This can feel impossible at first. It is not about forcing a feeling or condoning their actions. It is a quiet recognition of their humanity, an understanding that they too are suffering, that their harmful actions arise from their own confusion, fear, and pain. It is an acknowledgement that your own peace is more important than your right to hold a grudge. You cannot hold the warmth of metta and the hot coal of anger in your heart at the same time. One will inevitably displace the other. This practice is about choosing, for your own sake, to cultivate warmth. A famous story from the life of the Buddha perfectly illustrates the wisdom of this non-reactive stance. A man, hearing of the Buddha's teachings, became enraged and sought him out. He stood before the Buddha and unleashed a torrent of insults, calling him a fraud, a fool, and a charlatan. The Buddha listened patiently and silently until the man had exhausted himself. When he was finished, the Buddha asked him a simple question. "Sir," he said, "if you purchase a gift for someone, and that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The man, surprised, thought for a moment and replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course, because I bought it." The Buddha nodded gently. "Exactly so," he said, "and so it is with your anger. You have come here today and offered me the gift of your insults and your rage. I do not accept it. This is the ultimate act of letting go of anger. It is the realization that another person's anger is their own creation, their own hot coal. We are only burned by it if we choose to reach out and accept their gift. By refusing to take it personally, by refusing to react, we maintain the sovereignty of our own inner peace. Letting go of anger is not an act of weakness. It is an act of profound strength and self-respect. It is the choice to protect our own hearts over the fleeting satisfaction of being right. It is the work of managing our most powerful inner storms, which in turn prepares us to relate more wisely to the world outside ourselves, particularly to our complicated relationship with the world of things. Having journeyed through the turbulent inner landscapes of anger and control, we now turn our awareness outward to our relationship with the world of solid, tangible things. We live in a civilization that is saturated from morning until night with a single, powerful message. Happiness can be bought. Fulfillment, we are told, is available for purchase. Our identity, our sense of self-worth, and our very peace of mind are presented to us as commodities that can be acquired with the next transaction. This is the pervasive gospel of modern materialism, a form of collective thirst so deeply embedded in our culture that we rarely even notice its influence. It is the promise that the feeling of not enough that haunts us can be cured by having more. More clothes, a newer car, a bigger house, the latest smartphone. But the wisdom of letting go invites us to question this fundamental promise, to look deeply at our relationship with our possessions, and to ask, are these things truly setting us free, or are they forging a new and more subtle kind of chain? The engine of this system is the relentless manufacturing of desire. Modern advertising is a masterclass in exploiting the feeling of dukkha. It works not by fulfilling our needs, but by creating and amplifying a sense of lack. An advertisement for a luxury watch is not selling a time-telling device. It is selling status, success, and admiration. An advertisement for a beauty product is not selling a lotion. It is selling the promise of youth, desirability, and an escape from the fear of aging. This constant messaging creates a painful gap between the life we have and the idealized life we are told we should want. We are conditioned to believe that we are incomplete, that we are inadequate, and that the solution lies just outside of ourselves, on a store shelf or behind a screen. This traps us on what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. The cycle is cruelly simple and endlessly repetitive. First, a desire is created. We become convinced that acquiring a particular object will finally make us happy. Second, we strive for it. We work longer hours, we take on debt, we invest our precious life energy into obtaining it. Third, we succeed. We make the purchase, and for a brief, shining moment, there is a jolt of pleasure, a feeling of satisfaction. But fourth, and this is the inevitable turn of the wheel, we adapt. The new car becomes just the car. The new phone becomes the baseline normal. The pleasure fades, and the original, underlying feeling of lack and dissatisfaction returns. The treadmill has simply reset, and our desire now latches onto a new, more ambitious target. We are left running faster and faster, accumulating more and more, just to maintain the same level of contentment. Our external world becomes increasingly cluttered, while our internal world remains stubbornly empty. It is here that the Buddhist perspective is often misunderstood. The path of letting go is not a call for forced poverty or a rejection of worldly comfort. There is nothing inherently unspiritual about living in a beautiful home, enjoying financial security, or appreciating well-crafted objects. The Buddha did not teach that possessions themselves are the problem. The problem, as always, is our attachment to them. The critical question we must ask ourselves is not, what do I own? But rather, to what extent do my possessions own me? You can know that you are owned by your possessions when your sense of self-worth rises and falls with your material status. You can know you are in bondage when you are filled with a constant, low-grade anxiety about your things being lost, stolen, or damaged. You can see the chains in the compulsive need to display your wealth, to use your possessions as a way of signaling your importance to others. And you can feel their weight most acutely in the poison of envy, the painful comparison of your own belongings with the seemingly better or more abundant belongings of others. This is not freedom. This is servitude to stuff. The person who has 100 precious things has 101 things to worry about. The person who has one has only 2. The antidote to this is not to renounce the world and live in a cave, but to cultivate a radically different inner state, the twin qualities of simplicity and contentment. This is the joy of enough. It is a profound and peaceful realization that you already have everything you truly need to be happy in this moment. It is a shifting of your source of validation from the external to the internal. Instead of seeking fulfillment in accumulation, you find it in appreciation. Instead of the frantic pursuit of more, you discover the deep satisfaction of simplicity. This can be a very practical, mindful practice. It is the art of conscious consumption. Before making a new purchase, we can learn to pause and ask ourselves a series of honest questions. Why do I want this? Am I seeking to fulfill a genuine need, or am I trying to soothe a feeling of anxiety, boredom, or inadequacy? Will this object truly add lasting value and joy to my life, or will it simply become more clutter, another thing to store, to clean, and to worry about? Will the debt or the work required to obtain this item be worth the fleeting pleasure it provides? This simple act of bringing mindful awareness to the process of consumption breaks the spell of unconscious desire. It empowers us to choose freedom over clutter, contentment over craving. This shift does not mean life becomes drab or impoverished. On the contrary, it becomes richer. When we are no longer obsessed with acquiring things, our senses open up to the immense wealth that is freely available in every moment. We discover the richness that cannot be bought or sold, the profound beauty of a sunset, the intricate pattern of a leaf, the comforting warmth of a conversation with a true friend, the deep, restorative peace of sitting in silence, the joy of a walk in nature. This is the real treasury. It cannot be stolen, it does not rust, and it will never go out of style. A beautiful story from the life of the Zen master and poet Ryokan illustrates this truth perfectly. Ryokan lived a life of extreme simplicity in a small hut at the foot of a mountain. He owned almost nothing. One evening, a thief broke into his hut, only to be deeply disappointed to find that there was nothing at all to steal. Just then, Ryokan returned from a walk. He saw the thief, not with anger, but with a heart full of compassion. "You have come all this way to visit me," Ryokan said gently, "and I have nothing to offer you as a gift." He looked down at his own ragged robes. "Please," he said, "at least take these." The bewildered thief, not knowing what else to do, took the robes and vanished into the night. Ryokan then sat naked by the window, watching the brilliant, full moon. He thought to himself, with a touch of sadness, "Poor man, I wish I could have given him this beautiful moon." This story reveals the two kinds of poverty and the two kinds of wealth. The thief, who believed wealth was something you could take, was truly impoverished. Ryokan, who owned absolutely nothing, was infinitely rich, for he possessed something that could not be taken: his intimate, unhindered connection to the beauty and stillness of the present moment. Letting go of our attachment to materialism is not an act of self-deprivation. It is the act of trading the illusion of wealth for the reality of it. It is the discovery that the moon is always available, always shining, and that our own peace of mind is the greatest treasure we could ever possess. This process of releasing our grip on external attachments and things, on status, on the approval of others, inevitably leads us to a deeper and more profound inquiry. If I am not my possessions, if I am not my job title, if I am not my reputation, then who or what am I? This question guides us away from the outer world and toward the final, most subtle object of attachment, the very idea of a self. We have arrived at the very center of the labyrinth, the final and most subtle object of our clinging. We have explored letting go of our attachment to the past, to the future, to our possessions, and to our most volatile emotions. But all of these attachments are, in fact, secondary. They are all rooted in one primary, foundational attachment, our clinging to the very idea of me. This is the final frontier of letting go. It is the practice of releasing our grip on the ego, the constructed self that we have spent a lifetime building, polishing, and defending, to a culture built upon the bedrock of individualism, on the celebration of the unique self. This can sound like a terrifying proposition, like an invitation to self-annihilation. But the wisdom of Zen suggests that what we are letting go of is not our true self, but a case of mistaken identity. It is the process of waking up from a dream of separation and realizing a reality that is far vaster, more mysterious, and more liberating than we can possibly imagine. For our entire lives, we have operated under the unquestioned assumption that inside our body and mind, there resides a central core, a permanent, independent I. This is the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, the CEO of our being. The Buddha, however, invites us to become investigators, to take up the tools of mindfulness and look for this self. Where is it? Is it in the body? Look at your body. It is a constantly changing collection of flesh, blood, and bone. Cells are dying and being replaced in every moment. It gets sick, it ages, it is impermanent. If you lose a limb in an accident, are you any less you? The body is something we have, not something we are. So, perhaps the self is our feelings. Look at your feelings. They are like the weather, constantly shifting. Joy arises and gives way to sadness. Peace is replaced by agitation. A feeling is a fleeting guest, never a permanent resident. We have feelings, but we cannot be our feelings. Well, then, is the self our thoughts? We have seen that thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of awareness. They are impersonal, conditioned phenomena. To believe you are your thoughts is as mistaken as the sky believing it is a single passing cloud. The Buddhist analysis breaks down this apparent self into 5 components, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. These are form, our body, feelings, perceptions, the labeling and recognizing process, mental formations, our habits, intentions, biases, and opinions, and consciousness itself, the raw faculty of knowing. The teaching invites us to look deeply into each of these 5 categories and ask, is this permanent? Is this truly me? Is this worthy of clinging to as myself? When we look with the clear light of meditative inquiry, we discover that each of these components is impermanent, in constant flux, and arises dependent on conditions outside of itself. We cannot find a solid, independent, unchanging self anywhere. The self we have been clinging to is revealed to be not a noun, but a verb. It is a process, a constantly changing aggregation of physical and mental phenomena. We have simply given this process a convenient name, me, and then mistaken the name for a real, solid thing. It is like looking at a flowing river and believing there is a solid entity called river, when in fact there is only the continuous, ever-changing process of flowing water. If this self is an illusion, why does it feel so real? Why do we have such a powerful sense of ego? The ego is a survival strategy. On a practical level, it is a useful convention. We need a functional sense of I to navigate the world. I need to eat. I need to cross the street safely. The problem begins when this practical, functional I hardens into a psychological identity, a fortress we build to protect ourselves from the inherent vulnerability and uncertainty of existence. This fortress ego is a full-time job to maintain, and its primary activities are comparison, judgment, and a ceaseless need to feel special. The ego lives on separation. It defines itself by drawing a hard line between me and not me, between mine and not mine. From this soil of separation, the poisons of comparison and jealousy grow. The ego constantly measures itself against others. Am I smarter, more successful, better looking, or am I less so? Its sense of worth is entirely relative, built on the rickety foundation of being better than. The ego also lives on being right. It clings to its opinions and beliefs as if they were precious jewels, because they reinforce its sense of identity and intelligence. When our opinions are challenged, the ego perceives it as a personal attack, which is why disagreements so often devolve into heated, emotional conflict. The ego must defend its territory at all costs, because without its beliefs and its sense of being special, it feels like it will die. And so, letting go of the ego is letting go of this exhausting, defensive crouch way of living. And this is the most important clarification. Letting go of the ego is not suicide. It is not self-destruction. You do not lose your personality, your memories, your unique talents, or your sense of humor. Rather, you let go of the clinging to this narrow, fabricated story of me. You stop identifying with the fortress and realize you are the entire landscape. The result is not a void, but a profound expansion. When the walls of the ego soften and become transparent, what shines through is not nothingness, but our deeper nature, which is characterized by wisdom, compassion, and a startling sense of connection to all of life. The very energy that was once consumed by defending, comparing, and judging is liberated for more creative and compassionate purposes. The Zen tradition tells a famous story that illustrates this principle perfectly. A highly educated university professor, a man renowned for his knowledge, came to visit the Zen master, Nanin, to inquire about the nature of Zen. From the moment he arrived, the professor began to talk, displaying his own vast learning, his theories, and his philosophical speculations. He spoke on and on, eager to impress the master with his intellectual prowess. Nanin listened patiently and then said, "Let us have some tea." He prepared the tea set, and as the professor continued to talk, the master began to pour tea into his visitor's cup. He filled the cup to the brim, and then, without pausing, he kept pouring. The hot tea overflowed, spilling onto the saucer, then onto the table, and then onto the floor. The professor, horrified, jumped up. "Stop," he shouted. "The cup is overfull. No more will go in." Nanin calmly put down the teapot, looked at the professor, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? This cup is our ego. It is filled to the brim with what we think we know, with our identity, our achievements, our beliefs, and our stories. We are so full of me that there is no room for reality to enter. To let go of the ego is the practice of emptying our cup. It is the act of setting down our cherished ideas about who we are and what we know, and cultivating instead a state of not knowing, an open, curious, receptive presence. It is in this emptiness, this spaciousness, that true wisdom can dawn. This emptying is the ultimate surrender. It is the shift from a self-centered universe to a life-centered one. It is the realization that you are not a separate fragment fighting against the whole, but that you are an inseparable expression of the whole. This does not lead to a feeling of lonely insignificance. It leads to the exact opposite. When the illusion of the separate self dissolves, we are not left with a void. We are left with the direct, undeniable, and profoundly comforting experience of our connection to everything else. We see that the same life that flows in us flows in the trees, the birds, the rivers, and even in the people we once considered other. The walls have come down, and we find ourselves, for the first time, truly at home in the world. We have stood at the edge of the abyss, at the final frontier of letting go, and we have emptied our cup of the thing we held most dear, the very idea of a separate self. The ego, that fortress of me and mine, has been seen for the illusion that it is. And so, a natural question arises. What is left? What fills the cup once it has been emptied of the self? The answer, both paradoxical and profoundly beautiful, is everything. When the walls of the separate self dissolve, we are not left in a cold, lonely void. We are left with the universe. We do not lose ourselves. We find ourselves in all that is. We awaken to the luminous, undeniable reality of our profound connection to all of life. The Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, coined a beautiful word to describe this reality: interbeing. The teaching of interbeing is simple in its essence, yet its implications are vast enough to change everything. To be is to interbe. Nothing in this cosmos exists by itself, for itself. Everything is profoundly interwoven with everything else. To make this clear, let us engage in a short meditation. Imagine you are holding a single sheet of paper in your hands. Look at it closely. We call it a sheet of paper, but it is so much more. In order to be here, this paper needed a tree. But the tree could not grow without the sun, the soil, the rain, and the air. So, the sun and the clouds are in this sheet of paper. Look closer still. The tree was cut down by a logger. The logger needed parents to be born. He needed to eat breakfast this morning to have the strength to work. So, the logger, his parents, and the wheat that made his bread are all, in some way, present in this sheet of paper. The paper was then transported to a mill, so the truck, the gasoline that fueled it, the workers at the oil refinery, and the roads it traveled upon are also here. The factory that turned the wood pulp into this sheet of paper required electricity, machines, and the labor of many people. All of these causes and conditions are embedded in this simple object. If we were to remove any one of these elements, if we were to take away the sun, or the rain, or the logger, or the farmer who grew the wheat for the logger's bread, this sheet of paper could not exist. So, while the paper appears to be a single, solid thing, it is, in fact, empty of a separate, independent self. Yet, at the same time, it is full of the entire cosmos. It interexists with everything else. This is the heart of the teaching. To be is to inter-be. We cannot be by ourselves alone. We can only interbe. Now, let us turn this gaze upon ourselves. Look at your own hand. What do you see? We call it my hand, but like the sheet of paper, it is a nexus of the entire universe. Your hand is here because of your parents and your grandparents, and an unbroken lineage of ancestors stretching back to the dawn of life. All of their lives, their struggles, and their joys are present in the DNA that codes for this hand. The food you ate for breakfast this morning is present in this hand, giving it the energy to move. This means the farmer who grew the food is here. The soil that nourished the plants is here. The sun and the rain that allowed them to grow are right here in your hand. The air you are breathing in this very moment, a gift from the trees and the algae in the sea, is flowing through the blood in your veins. The people who built the house you live in, who made the clothes you wear, who taught you how to read these words, their efforts, their skills, their very lives are interwoven with yours. You are not a separate entity living in the world. You are the world, experiencing itself through this particular, temporary form. The hard boundary we draw between self and other is a fiction of the mind, when this is no longer an intellectual concept, but a deeply felt, direct experience. Our entire relationship to life is transformed, and nowhere is this transformation more apparent than in the arising of true compassion, or karuna. In the old way of seeing, the way of the separate self, compassion is often a moral duty or a form of pity. We see another person suffering and we think, "Oh, that poor person. I feel sorry for them." Pity, by its very nature, reinforces the separation. It creates a hierarchy. I, the fortunate one, am looking down upon you, the unfortunate one. But from the perspective of interbeing, compassion is something entirely different. It is not a moral choice. It is a natural, spontaneous, visceral response. When we truly understand that the other person is not separate from us, their suffering is no longer their problem. Their suffering is a part of our own larger body. When your left hand is accidentally struck by a hammer, your right hand does not stop and think, "Oh, that poor left hand. As a moral duty, I should probably help it." The right hand immediately and instinctively reaches out to comfort and protect the left hand. Why? Because it knows, on the deepest possible level, that they are parts of the same body. True compassion, karuna, is this instinctive response of the universe caring for itself. When we see another suffer, we feel it directly, because the boundary between us is permeable, illusory. Their joy becomes our joy. Their pain becomes our pain. This is the wellspring of all genuine love and selfless action. The Mahayana Buddhist tradition offers a beautiful and powerful metaphor to help us visualize this interconnected reality. It is the image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, cosmic net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single node where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, perfectly clear, multifaceted jewel. The net is structured in such a way that if you look closely at the polished surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it every single other jewel in the entire, infinite net. Not only that, but each reflection itself contains the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on, ad infinitum. Each jewel is a unique, individual point, yet its very existence is defined by its relationship to all the others. It has no identity apart from its reflections of the whole. We are each one of those jewels. Our life, our consciousness, is a single point of light that simultaneously contains and reflects all other points of light. When we see this, we realize that to harm another is, in the most literal sense, to harm ourselves. The pain we inflict is immediately reflected back into our own being, and to bring joy, healing, or peace to another being is to brighten the entire net, to polish every jewel, including our own. There is no such thing as a solitary salvation or a private peace. Our liberation is bound up with the liberation of all. To let go of the ego, then, is not to fall into a state of lonely isolation. It is to awaken into a state of profound and intimate belonging. It is to realize that you are not a separate drop of water, but the entire ocean in a single wave. You are a unique and precious expression of the whole, and the whole is a shimmering expression of you. It is the end of loneliness. It is the discovery that our true home is not within the cramped confines of our own skin, but in the vast, interwoven tapestry of all existence. With this breathtaking perspective as our foundation, we can now turn to look again at one of the first principles we encountered, the law of impermanence, and see it not as a threat to our solid self, but as the very rhythm of the dance of interbeing. We return now to a fundamental truth we encountered at the very beginning of our journey, but we return with new eyes. In our initial diagnosis of the human condition, we met the concept of anicca, or impermanence, and we experienced it as a source of suffering. We saw it as the thief that steals our happiness, the force that causes beautiful moments to fade and loved ones to leave us. From the perspective of the separate, clinging ego, impermanence is the ultimate threat, the final, undeniable proof that we are not in control. But having walked the path of letting go, having seen through the illusion of the separate self and touched the reality of our interbeing, we can now revisit this great law, not as an enemy, but as a wise and compassionate teacher. We can learn to see that impermanence is not a flaw in the fabric of existence. It is the very thread from which life itself is woven. Our struggle with impermanence has never been about the fact that things change. The struggle arises entirely from our demand that they do not. It is the war between our desire for permanence and the universe's fundamental nature of flux. We fall in love with a particular arrangement of reality, a moment of perfect joy, a period of youthful health, a cherished relationship in its blissful early stage, and we try to freeze it, to make it static. We build a fortress of attachment around it, hoping to protect it from the relentless river of time. But the river always wins. The flower fades, the body ages, the feeling shifts, the moment passes. Our suffering is born in the gap between the way things are and the way we demand they should be. To let go of the need for permanence is to declare peace in this self-imposed war. It is to finally stop fighting reality and instead learn to dance with it. When we stop resisting, we can begin to see the profound beauty and necessity of impermanence. Far from being the enemy of life, it is the very precondition for it. Nothing can come to be without something else passing away. For a seed to become a mighty oak tree, it must cease to be a seed. It must break apart, surrender its form, and undergo a complete transformation. If the seed were permanent, it would remain a small, hard, lifeless pebble forever. For a caterpillar to become a butterfly, it must dissolve into a nutrient soup within its chrysalis. If the caterpillar were permanent, the butterfly could never be born. Life is not a state of being, it is a constant process of becoming, and this process is fueled by impermanence. This same principle governs our inner lives. The very possibility of healing and growth depends entirely on impermanence. If you are experiencing a moment of deep sadness or grief, the truth of impermanence is your greatest ally. It is the guarantee that this state is not a life sentence. The clouds will pass, the emotional weather will change. If our moods were permanent, our first childhood disappointment would last a lifetime. Likewise, the ability to learn a new skill, to change a harmful habit, or to grow in wisdom is only possible because our minds and characters are not fixed. Impermanence is the law that makes transformation possible. It is the foundation of all hope. For anyone stuck in a difficult situation, in a painful emotional state, or in a destructive habit, the news that this too shall pass is the best news in the world. We can actively cultivate this liberating perspective through contemplation. We can start by observing our own bodies. In this very moment, your body is a swirling vortex of change. With every breath, air comes in and goes out. Millions of cells are dying, and millions more are being born. The person you were, physically, 7 years ago, is almost entirely gone, replaced by new matter. To contemplate the body's impermanence is not to be morbid. It is to gently loosen our attachment to a specific physical identity, to soften our vanity, and to cultivate a sense of ease with the natural, flowing process of life. We can also look to the world of nature, the greatest teacher of anicca. Watch the seasons turn. Spring's tender green gives way to the fullness of summer, which mellows into the glorious colors of autumn, before surrendering to the stark silence of winter, which in turn holds the promise of a new spring. The cycle is one of constant, graceful, and necessary change. Observe the life of a single flower, from bud to full bloom to wilting decay, each stage possessing its own unique beauty. Nature does not fight against impermanence. It embodies it with an effortless grace. And most intimately, in our meditation practice, we can observe the impermanence of our own minds. A thought arises, seeming so urgent and solid. We watch it, and it dissolves into nothing. A powerful emotion like joy or anger floods our system, feeling as if it will last forever. We sit with it, and we witness it crest like a wave and then recede. This direct, first-hand observation is the most powerful confirmation. We see for ourselves that the contents of our consciousness are as fleeting as dreams. This insight naturally loosens our tendency to cling to them. Why grasp so tightly to a cloud? Why build our house on a passing wave? When we truly make peace with impermanence, something remarkable happens. It infuses every moment of our lives with a sense of preciousness. It is the fleeting nature of things that makes them beautiful. We cherish the delicate beauty of a cherry blossom precisely because we know it will only last for a few days. We are moved by the brilliant colors of a sunset because we know it is a transient spectacle. If the sunset were permanent, if it were painted on the sky for all eternity, we would soon take it for granted, and eventually we would cease to notice it at all. Its beauty is amplified by its brevity. The Japanese have a term, wabi-sabi, which captures this aesthetic sensibility. It is the practice of finding beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is the beauty of a cracked teacup, a moss-covered stone, a weathered wooden gate. It is an appreciation for the grace of things as they are, in their natural state of flux and decay. To live with this spirit is to let go of the stressful pursuit of perfection and to find peace and beauty in the authentic, transient nature of life. Impermanence is the force that makes each moment unique. This conversation, this cup of tea, this particular slant of afternoon light, this exact combination of conditions will never, ever happen again. Knowing this is a powerful invitation to show up for our lives, to pay attention, to savor the simple miracle of being here at all. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." He meant that the river is constantly flowing, constantly changing. But the Zen masters added a deeper layer. You cannot step into the same river twice, because not only is the river not the same, but you are not the same. We too are a flowing, changing process. There is no fixed self to be threatened by a changing world. There is only the beautiful, unified, and ever-changing dance of interbeing. By embracing impermanence, we let go of our fear of death, the death of the moment, the death of a feeling, the death of the body. We trade our anxious craving for security, for the adventurous freedom of the present. We learn to hold our lives, our relationships, and our experiences with an open, gentle hand, appreciating them more, not less, because we know they are transient gifts. This profound acceptance of the flowing, dynamic nature of reality leads us to one final, deep inquiry. If everything is constantly changing, if nothing has a fixed, independent essence, what is the ultimate nature of these phenomena that we perceive? This question guides us into the very heart of Zen wisdom, to the concept of emptiness, or shunyata. We now venture into the very heart of Mahayana and Zen wisdom, to a concept that is at once the most profound, the most subtle, and the most easily misunderstood. It is the teaching of emptiness, or shunyata in Sanskrit. The word itself can be frightening. It conjures images of a cold, nihilistic void, a bleak nothingness at the core of existence. But this is a fundamental misinterpretation. In the Buddhist view, the realization of emptiness is not a doorway to despair, but the very gateway to ultimate freedom, boundless compassion, and a deeply joyful engagement with life. Emptiness is not a lack. It is a description of the way things truly are. It is the deepest expression of the truths we have already touched upon: impermanence and interbeing. The crucial question to ask at the outset is this: empty of what? Things are not empty of existence. The chair you are sitting on is real. The sound of these words is real. Emptiness does not deny the conventional reality that we experience. Rather, things are empty of a separate, solid, independent, and permanent self. They are empty of what is called svabhava, or own being. Nothing in the entire cosmos exists from its own side, by its own power, sealed off from everything else. Let us return to the simple example of a wooden table. We see it, we can touch it, we can use it. It has a form, a function, a name. But let us look for the tableness of the table. Where does it reside? Is it in the legs? Is it in the flat top? If we break the table down into its component parts, we are left with pieces of wood. We cannot find an essential table that exists apart from its parts. Now, let us look at what the table is made of. It is made of wood, which came from a tree. The tree needed the sun, the rain, and the soil to grow. It needed carbon dioxide from the air. The tree was cut by a logger who needed food, water, and parents to exist. The wood was shaped by a carpenter, using tools and knowledge passed down through generations. If we remove any of these non-table elements, if we take away the sun, the forest, the carpenter, the table ceases to exist. So, the table is empty of a separate, independent self. Its existence is entirely dependent on a vast web of conditions that are not the table itself. And yet, at the same time, the table is full of the entire universe. This is the paradox and the beauty of emptiness. It is not a void. It is a plenum of radical, total interdependence. This profound insight is captured in the most famous lines from the Heart Sutra, a core Mahayana text. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Let us unpack this slowly. The first part, form is emptiness, means that everything we perceive in the world of forms a body, a mountain, a thought, a feeling when we look at it deeply, is found to be empty of a separate, abiding self. All forms are composite, conditioned, and impermanent. They are like waves on the ocean. A wave has a distinct form. It has a beginning, a peak, and an end. But what is it truly made of? It is made entirely of water. It is empty of any separate waveness. Its fundamental nature is water. So, form, the wave, is emptiness of a separate self. The second part, emptiness is form, is even more profound. It means that this reality of emptiness, this interconnectedness, is not some abstract dimension separate from our world. Emptiness is found only and always right here in the world of form. The only way the ocean can express itself is as waves. The only way the reality of emptiness manifests is as this very table, this tree, this body, this thought. Emptiness is the very vibrancy and aliveness of the world. The table is not just an illustration of emptiness. It is the living, breathing manifestation of emptiness. Our lives are not something that happens within an empty universe. Our lives are the dance of emptiness itself. The wave and the water are not two separate things. Form and emptiness are not two separate things. They are two aspects of a single, unified reality. When this is no longer a philosophical concept but a direct, lived realization, it brings about a profound sense of freedom. Why? Because all of our suffering, our dukkha, arises from clinging, and we can only cling to things that we believe are solid, separate, and permanent. We cling to our bodies, our possessions, our opinions, our identities. But if all of these things, including the very I who is doing the clinging, are seen to be empty of a solid, separate self, what is there left to cling to? The entire foundation of grasping dissolves. It is like trying to catch a fistful of smoke. When there is nothing to hold on to, the hand naturally relaxes and opens. This is freedom from the endless cycle of craving and attachment. This realization also liberates us from our deepest fears. Our fear of loss, our fear of failure, and our ultimate fear of death are all predicated on the belief that we have a solid, separate self that can be diminished or destroyed. But if our true nature is not this small, isolated ego, but is instead as vast and interconnected as the cosmos itself, What is there to fear? Does the wave fear dissolving back into the ocean? No, because the wave's true nature is the ocean. To realize emptiness is to realize that our true identity is not the fragile, temporary wave, but the deathless, boundless ocean of being itself. With this release from clinging and fear, a new quality of being can emerge. It is a quality of lightness, of spontaneity, of playfulness. When we are no longer weighed down by the heavy, serious project of defending and promoting our ego, we can engage with life with a newfound ease. We can hold our opinions less tightly. We can take ourselves less seriously. We can act with courage and creativity, no longer paralyzed by the fear of failure, because the self that could fail is seen as a fiction. Life ceases to be a problem to be solved and becomes a dance to be danced. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the realization of emptiness is the ultimate ground for compassion. As long as we believe in a solid barrier between self and other, our compassion will always be limited. It will be something we do for someone else. But when the walls of separation dissolve in the light of emptiness, the very distinction between self and other collapses. When I see you, I see that you are empty of a separate self, but full of the same universe that I am full of. Your joy is not separate from my joy. Your suffering is not separate from my suffering. The suffering that appears over there is felt as a disturbance in the same unified field of being that is over here. Therefore, compassionate action ceases to be a choice based on moral principles. It becomes the natural, spontaneous, and inevitable expression of our true, non-separate nature. We act to alleviate suffering, not to be a good person or to help another, but because the suffering of another is our own. It is the universe itself acting to heal and balance itself. This is karuna, a compassion that is boundless, because it is born from a wisdom that sees no boundaries. To understand emptiness is to understand that it is not a bleak and empty void, but a vibrant, dynamic, and joyful reality. It is the ultimate letting go, the release of the final, most deeply held illusion of a separate self. It is the key that unlocks the door to a life of fearless spontaneity and boundless love. Yet, for a mind hearing of such profound letting go, of non-attachment and emptiness, it is easy to fall into a subtle but significant error to mistake this liberating wisdom for a cold, aloof, and uncaring detachment from the world. To ensure our path leads to warmth and connection, not to a sterile isolation, we must now draw a clear and crucial distinction between wise non-attachment and its counterfeit, cold indifference. We have journeyed to the very core of reality, exploring the profound and liberating truths of emptiness and impermanence. We have spoken of letting go of the ego, of our stories, and of our attachments. For a mind steeped in the conventional way of seeing the world, a significant and understandable fear may arise at this point. It is the fear that this path leads to a cold, disengaged, and uncaring state of being. It is the fear that in letting go of our attachments, we will also let go of our love, our passion, and our ability to connect deeply with the world. We might imagine that the goal is to become a kind of spiritual zombie, aloof and unmoved by either the beauty or the suffering of life. This is perhaps the greatest misconception of the path, and it is here that we must draw a clear and crucial distinction between the wisdom of non-attachment and its cold, fearful counterfeit, the state of indifference. Indifference is a fortress. It is a defense mechanism built by a fearful ego. Faced with the undeniable reality that life includes pain, loss, and disappointment, the indifferent mind makes a strategic retreat. It says, I will not be hurt if I do not care. I will not suffer loss if I never truly value anything. I will protect my heart by encasing it in ice. This is not a state of freedom. It is a state of contracted, self-imposed imprisonment. The energy of indifference is cold, hard, and cynical. It is a constant, subtle pushing away of life, a refusal to engage authentically for fear of the potential pain. The indifferent person stands on the shore, arms crossed, refusing to enter the water because it might be too cold or the current too strong. They may be safe from drowning, but they will also never know the joy of swimming. Indifference is not born of wisdom. It is born of aversion, a deep-seated resistance to the fullness of the human experience. True non-attachment is the very opposite of this. It is not a retreat from life, but the condition for the fullest possible engagement with it. Non-attachment is not the absence of love, but the absence of clinging, possessive, ego-driven grasping. It is the ability to love with an open hand, rather than a clenched fist. The attached mind says, "I love you, therefore I must possess you. You must behave in a way that makes me happy, and I will be terrified of losing you." The non-attached mind says, "I love you, therefore I set you free. I cherish your presence in my life, but I do not own it, and I will celebrate you for who you are, not for who I need you to be." The energy of non-attachment is warm, spacious, and courageous, because it is no longer terrified of the pain of loss. The non-attached heart can afford to love more deeply, more completely, and more fearlessly than the attached heart ever could. Let us use the metaphor of a beautiful garden. A person practicing indifference refuses to plant a garden at all. Why bother, they might say. The weather is unpredictable. Pests might eat the plants. A storm could destroy it all in an instant. It's better not to invest the energy. They protect themselves from potential disappointment by denying themselves the entire experience of beauty, growth, and nourishment. The person practicing attachment, on the other hand, plants a garden but is in a constant state of anxiety about it. They obsess over every detail. They live in fear of the slightest blight or a cloudy day. They see the garden not as a flowing process to be enjoyed, but as a product to be perfected and possessed. If a sudden hailstorm comes and damages the plants, they are personally devastated, filled with rage and despair. Their sense of self was so entwined with the success of the garden that its destruction feels like a personal failure, a deep wound to their ego. Now consider the person practicing non-attachment. They love the garden with their entire being. They pour their care, their attention, and their skill into it. They wake up early to water the soil. They delight in the unfolding of every new leaf. They savor the fragrance of every blossom. They are more deeply engaged with the garden than anyone. However, their love is for the process of gardening, not for a guaranteed outcome. They understand that the garden is a part of a larger, uncontrollable ecosystem. They know that storms will come, that seasons will turn. And so, if that same hailstorm arrives and flattens their beloved plants, they will feel a natural, human sadness at the loss of beauty. But they will not be destroyed. Their core being remains untouched. They do not rage against the sky, for they never believed they controlled it. They feel the sadness. They allow it to pass. And then, with the same loving attention, they begin the work of tending to the damaged soil, preparing for the next season of growth. Non-attachment is not the refusal to plant. It is the wisdom to plant with all your heart, while understanding that you do not control the weather. This balanced, spacious, and caring state of mind has a name in the Buddhist tradition. It is called upekkha, or equanimity. It is one of the four sublime states, along with loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, and sympathetic joy, mudita. This is crucial. Equanimity is not listed with qualities of apathy or cynicism. It is placed alongside love and joy. It is not a dull, gray neutrality. It is a radiant and deeply stable mind. It is the ability to hold both the joys and the sorrows of the world, the praise and the blame, the success and the failure, without being knocked off your center. It is the quality of a deep ocean, which can remain calm and still in its depths, regardless of the turbulent waves crashing on the surface. This equanimity is not a forced state of emotional suppression. It is the natural result of wisdom. It is born from the deep, experiential understanding of impermanence, interbeing, and non-self. When you truly see that all things are in flux, that you are not separate from the world, and that there is no fixed ego to defend, the mind naturally settles into a state of balance. It stops grasping at pleasure and pushing away pain, because it sees both as simply passing weather patterns in the vast sky of awareness. This is the opposite of indifference. The indifferent mind is closed and hard, protecting itself. The mind of equanimity is radically open and soft, strong enough to embrace the totality of reality without fear. We can think of it like the sun. The sun shines its light and its warmth down upon the earth without discrimination. It shines on the beautiful rose garden and on the muddy field. It shines on the kindest person and on the most cruel. The sun does not demand that the mud become a rose garden in order to be worthy of its light. It does not withhold its warmth from those who do not appreciate it. It simply gives of its nature freely, completely, without agenda, and without attachment to the outcome. This is the nature of a heart that abides in non-attachment. It radiates its warmth, its care, its love, because that is its nature, not because it seeks a specific result. Therefore, the path of letting go does not lead to a heart that is empty and cold. It leads to a heart that is so open, so stable, and so free from fear that it is finally able to love the world as it is. We let go of the need for people to be different than they are. We let go of the need for life to conform to our rigid expectations. We let go of our own self-centered drama. And in this great letting go, we find we have the capacity to care more, not less. We can be present for the suffering of others without being overwhelmed by it. We can celebrate the joy of others without a trace of envy. We can finally love without the suffocating need for anything in return. This is the warmth of true freedom. With this clear, compassionate understanding as our guide, we are now prepared to take all of these profound principles, letting go of the past and future, of the ego, of control, of anger, of materialism, of attachment itself, and ask the final, practical question: how do we live this in the midst of our busy, complicated, modern lives? We have journeyed far into the inner landscapes of the mind, exploring the profound wisdom of letting go. We have sat on the meditation cushion, our personal laboratory, and observed the nature of our own thoughts, emotions, and attachments. A natural and valid question may now arise. This is all beautiful in the quiet of a meditation hall, but how does it survive contact with the real world? How does one practice non-attachment when faced with a looming deadline, a difficult family member, or a financial crisis? The unspoken fear is that this path is for monks in monasteries, not for ordinary people in the messy, chaotic marketplace of modern life. This section is the bridge between the monastery and the marketplace. It is about taking this wisdom off the cushion and weaving it into the very fabric of our daily existence. A famous Zen saying goes, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." This is perhaps the most important teaching for integrating this path into our lives. The practice does not, for most of us, remove us from our daily responsibilities. The bills still need to be paid. The children still need to be cared for. The work still needs to be done. The world does not change. We change. Our relationship to the chopping and the carrying is what is transformed. Our life, exactly as it is, becomes the monastery, the marketplace becomes the meditation hall. The ultimate test of our practice is not how serene we are in silence, but how we are in traffic. This integration begins with a redefinition of practice. We must let go of the idea that our spiritual life is something that only happens for 20 minutes in the morning on a cushion. Every moment of our day is an opportunity to practice. This is the art of meditation in action. Consider the mundane task of washing the dishes. Our default mode is to treat it as a chore, to be rushed through while our mind is somewhere else rehashing the day, planning the evening, worrying about a problem. But this simple task can become a profound practice in mindfulness. The instruction is to, just for these few minutes, simply wash the dishes. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. Notice the smooth, solid reality of the plate. See the iridescent shimmer of the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the sponge scrubbing away the remnants of the meal. In these moments, you are not thinking about your life. You are fully living it. You are present. You are chopping wood. This can be applied to anything. When you are walking from your car to your office, feel the sensation of your feet making contact with the ground. Notice the rhythm of your own stride. Feel the air on your skin. When you are drinking a cup of coffee, just drink the coffee. Taste its bitterness, smell its aroma, feel its warmth. In our hyper-connected world, we have become masters of distraction. The practice is to cultivate moments of deep, single-pointed attention. Use common daily events as a bell of mindfulness. A ringing phone can be a reminder to take one conscious breath before answering. A red traffic light, instead of being a source of impatience, can be your teacher. An invitation to release your grip on the steering wheel, to feel your body in the seat, and to simply be for 30 seconds without an agenda. Now, let us bring this into the workplace, a primary source of stress for so many. How does one practice letting go in an environment built on ambition and results? One of the most powerful practices is to let go of your attachment to outcomes. This does not mean you don't care about doing a good job. On the contrary, you pour your full skill, creativity, and effort into your work. You do the absolute best you can, and then you let it go. You release your white-knuckled grip on the need for a specific result, a particular promotion, a certain amount of praise, the successful launch of a project. You understand that your job is the effort. The outcome is dependent on 1,000 variables beyond your control. This practice frees you from the immense anxiety of needing things to turn out a certain way and allows you to find satisfaction in the integrity of your work itself. Another profound practice at work is to let go of the need to be right. In meetings, in collaborations, in disagreements, the ego loves to win. It clings to its own opinions and defends them as if its life depended on it. A Zen approach is to practice deep listening. Instead of formulating your rebuttal while the other person is speaking, you offer them the gift of your full attention. You become genuinely curious about their perspective. This does not mean you must always agree, but it does mean you value harmony and collective wisdom over the ego's small victory of being right. You will find that this not only reduces conflict and stress, but it also leads to more creative and effective solutions. When dealing with a difficult colleague, you can practice seeing them as the empty boat. Instead of reacting with anger at their behavior, you can see it as a product of their own unseen causes and conditions, their own suffering. This allows you to respond with skill and equanimity rather than reactive anger. Perhaps the most potent arena for this practice is in our relationships with those we love. Here, our attachments are the strongest and our vulnerabilities the greatest. To practice letting go in our relationships is to learn to love without possessing. It is the understanding that our partners, our children, and our friends are not here to fulfill our expectations or to complete our own life story. They are sovereign beings on their own journey. Our role is to love them, support them, and grant them the freedom to be who they are, not who we want them to be. This means letting go of the need to control them, to fix them, or to have them behave in a certain way to make us feel secure. This practice requires mindful communication. It means applying the principles of right speech, speaking truthfully and kindly, without blame or harshness. It means listening with our whole being, creating a safe space where the other person feels seen and heard without judgment. It means noticing our own emotional reactions as they arise during a conversation and taking responsibility for them, rather than blaming our partner for making us feel a certain way. It is the constant, gentle work of letting go of our ego's agenda in favor of a genuine, heart-to-heart connection. Ultimately, living a life of letting go means finding your monastery everywhere. It is the realization that you don't need to retreat from the world to find peace. Peace is a way of being in the world. Your office, your kitchen, your karthis become your practice halls. Every interaction, every task, every unexpected challenge becomes an opportunity to return to the breath, to notice the mind's clinging, and to gently, kindly let go. Our lives, with all their beauty, their messiness, and their unpredictability, are not an obstacle to our awakening. They are the very ground of it. The practice is not about reaching some final, static state of perfect enlightenment where nothing ever bothers us again. That is a fantasy. The practice is the continuous, moment-to-moment process of coming back. It is a lifelong journey of softening, of opening, of learning to chop wood with our full attention and to carry water with a grateful heart. We have traveled together on a long and profound journey. We began in the gridlock traffic of a restless mind, diagnosed the universal condition of dukkha, and identified its root cause in the insatiable thirst of tanha. We saw the glimmer of hope in the possibility of its cessation, nirodha, and we have just walked the practical eightfold path that leads toward that freedom. We have explored the arts of letting go of the past, the future, control, anger, materialism, and even the very notion of a separate self. And so, as we near the end of this exploration, the mind, in its habitual way, may seek a final destination. It may ask, when do I arrive? When is the practice complete? When can I finally rest, having achieved a permanent state of peace? This is the last and most subtle illusion we must let go of. The idea that this path is a linear journey with a final graduation day. The deepest truth of this practice is that the journey is the destination. The path is not a means to an end. The path itself, walked in each moment, is the end. For a mind conditioned by a culture of achievement, this can be difficult to accept. We want the spiritual trophy, the certificate of enlightenment. The ego, even when it takes on a spiritual guise, is still the ego. It wants to add enlightened person to its collection of identities. It wants to be able to say, I have arrived. I have completed the project of my own liberation. But this very desire, this subtle, future-oriented striving, is the very opposite of the state it seeks. True awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about letting go of the someone who is trying to become. It is a continuous process of subtraction, not addition. The attachment to the goal of a future enlightenment is the final, most tenacious obstacle to being awake right now. The practice is to let go of even this most sublime and spiritual desire. So, what does this lifelong practice actually look like? It does not look like a steady, upward climb to a mountain peak. It looks much more like a spiral. We will circle back to the same core life lessons again and again. You may have a profound week of practice where you feel a deep sense of peace and non-attachment, only to find yourself completely consumed by anger or anxiety the following week over something trivial. You may feel you have finally understood the illusion of the ego, only to have it roar back to life when you are criticized or ignored. This is not a sign that you have failed. It is not a regression. It is the nature of the spiral path. Each time you circle back to anger, to fear, to control, you do so from a slightly different vantage point. You bring a little more awareness, a little more wisdom, a little more compassion to the encounter than you did the time before. Progress on this path is not measured by the absence of difficulty, but by the change in our relationship to it. The first time you truly observed your anger, perhaps you were lost in it for a whole day, consumed by resentful stories. The next time it arose, with the tool of mindfulness, perhaps you were only lost for an hour before you remembered to breathe and observe. In time, perhaps you will be lost for only a minute, and eventually, you may be able to see the anger arise and pass away in a matter of seconds, without ever being truly swept away by its current. This is progress. It is not about becoming a superhuman who never feels anger. It is about becoming a wise human who is no longer a slave to it. The goal is not to eliminate the weather, but to become the sky that can hold all weather with a spacious and unwavering calm. To walk this spiral path for a lifetime requires two qualities above all others: patience and a profound, unconditional compassion for yourself. Our minds are conditioned by decades of habit, decades of clinging, of worrying, of judging. These patterns will not unravel overnight. The inner critic, the voice of the ego that demands perfection, will tell you that you are not practicing hard enough, that you are not getting it right, that you are a failure. This voice is the enemy of the path. The practice is to meet this inner critic and all your perceived failings with a radical kindness. When you sit to meditate and your mind wanders away for the 1000th time, you do not meet it with frustration. You meet it with the gentle patience of a loving parent guiding a toddler back to the path, saying, "Ah, there you go again. Let's come back." When you fall back into an old, reactive habit, you do not meet yourself with shame. You meet yourself with the compassion of a good friend, saying, "This is difficult. You are learning. Let us begin again." This self-compassion is not a form of self-indulgence or an excuse for laziness. It is the essential ingredient that creates the inner environment in which growth is possible. A garden cannot grow in frozen, compacted soil. It needs soil that is soft, aerated, and forgiving. Your heart is this garden. Self-compassion is the act of tending to your own soil. In the tradition of Zen calligraphy, there is a practice of drawing an enso, a circle, with a single, fluid brushstroke. The enso is a profound symbol. It represents the totality of the universe, the void, the fullness of the present moment. It symbolizes enlightenment, strength, and perfect elegance. It is a manifestation of the artist's mind in a single, expressive gesture. But if you look closely at many traditional enso paintings, you will notice something beautiful. The circle is often imperfect. There is a small gap where the ends do not quite meet. The thickness of the ink may vary. The circle may be slightly asymmetrical. This imperfection is not a mistake. It is an intentional and essential part of the art. The gap in the circle represents the transient, imperfect, and incomplete nature of all things, including ourselves. It symbolizes that the practice is always open, always ongoing. It is a celebration of the beauty of our own human imperfection. Our life is the drawing of an enso. It is not a static, perfect circle to be achieved and framed. It is the continuous, messy, beautiful, human gesture of the drawing itself. The enlightenment is not in the finished product. It is in the single, flowing brushstroke of this very moment. Therefore, we let go of the need to arrive. We embrace the understanding that this path is a circle, not a line. The journey truly is the destination. Every breath, is an arrival. Every moment of remembering to be present is a moment of awakening. Every time we notice our clinging and gently unclench our fist, we are touching freedom. The point is not to become a flawless saint, but to become a more authentic, compassionate, and fully alive human being. It is to learn, day by day, moment by moment, how to chop our wood with undivided attention, and how to carry our water with a grateful and peaceful heart. This understanding, this settling into the reality of a lifelong practice, prepares us now to conclude our journey, to summarize the path we have walked, and to step back into our lives, not with a new set of answers, but with a new and more spacious way of being. Our journey together is drawing to a close. We began in a place familiar to us all, a state of being stuck, symbolized by a hand clenched tightly around a steering wheel, a mind gridlocked with the traffic of its own anxieties. We began with the diagnosis of this subtle, pervasive suffering, this feeling of being at odds with life. We traced its origin to the clinging mind, the insatiable thirst that keeps us chasing phantoms of the past and future. We saw a glimmer of light in the profound truth that an end to this suffering is possible. And so, we walked a path together, a path of letting go. We learned to release our grip on our stories, on our need for control, on our anger, on our possessions, and finally, on the very idea of a separate self that was doing all the clinging. We have traveled from the clenched fist of fear to the open hand of acceptance. If there is one essential truth to carry forth from this journey, it is this: peace is not a destination you arrive at in the outer world. It is not hidden in the next accomplishment, the next relationship, or the next possession. It has been here all along. Peace is the natural state of a mind that is no longer at war with reality. It is the quiet stillness that is revealed when we let go of all that is not essential. For a lifetime, we are taught to believe that happiness comes from grasping, from accumulating, from holding on. The great paradox of this path is the discovery that true joy and freedom come from the opposite direction. They are found in the courage to release, to surrender, and to open. An open hand is not empty. It is simply open enough to receive the boundless gifts of the present moment. An open heart is not weak. It is simply open enough to hold the totality of life's beauty and its sorrow with a deep and unshakable equanimity. Letting go is not an act of loss. It is the ultimate act of gain, the gain of your own freedom. You do not need to retreat to a mountaintop or enter a monastery to walk this path. You do not need any special equipment or any external authority. Everything you need, you already have. Your most faithful teacher is your own breath, the constant, gentle anchor that can bring you home to the present moment from any storm of thought. Your greatest tool is your own awareness, the clear, quiet light that can shine on your habits and, in the seeing, begin to dissolve them. The path does not begin tomorrow after you have read one more book or perfected your meditation posture. It begins now. It begins with this breath. It begins with feeling the simple sensation of your body sitting here. It begins with noticing a thought and gently letting it go. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single mindful step. May you walk on in peace, in freedom, and with a compassionate heart that is open to all.